Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the July 2018 public meeting of the Virginia Beach Planning Commission. My name is Bob Thornton. I serve as the chairman. Before we get started, I've asked Don Horsley to lead us in prayer and followed by the pledge led by Commissioner Ripley. Please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you today thanking you for your guidance and wisdom as we begin the hearing today. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Help us to remember our responsibilities to serve our community and great insight guided by understanding, wisdom, and respect for all. As we make decisions today, help us to promote the common good as we work together for the betterment of our great city. As trusted servants, we seek blessings of our deliberations and on our efforts here today. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Horsley, for the prayer, and thank you, Commissioner Ripley, for the pledge. I've asked Commissioner Hodson to introduce the Planning Commission members.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. To my far right, your left, is our City Attorney, Kay Wilson. Beside Kay is Jack Wall. Jack is a civil engineer, and he represents the Rose Hall District. Next is Dr. Karen Kwasny. She's a professor of literature and cultural studies, and she represents the Princess Anne District. Next is Don Horsley. Don's a farmer in Princess Anne, and he is an at-large member. Next is Ron Ripley. Ron's in real estate management and development, and he's an at-large member. Our secretary of the commission is next. That's Jan Rosinski. She is a property manager, and she represents the Centerville District. You've met our chairman, Bob Thornton. Bob's in commercial real estate sales, leasing, and development, and he represents the Lynn Haven District. To my right is an empty seat, which is usually our vice chair, Dee Oliver. She's an at-large member and a funeral director, and Dee is out today dealing with the illness of a family member, and we'd like to keep her in our thoughts and prayers today. My name is Jeff Hodson. I represent the Beach District, and I'm in real estate development. To my left is Mike Inman. Mike's an attorney in real estate development, and he is an at-large member. Next is David Weiner. David's in commercial sales, and he represents Kempsville District. Next is Dave Redmond. Dave Redmond is in commercial real estate and represents the Bayside District. And beside Dave is our planning director, Barry Frankenfield. And Barry, if you would please introduce.
Okay, thank you very much. To my left, we have a lot of staff here today. Pam Sandloop and Delina Cartwright are managing your votes and your minutes. On the planning bench, we have Kevin Kemp, Carolyn Smith. I don't know where she is, but I'm sure she'll be back. Jimmy McNamara, Jonathan Sanders. In the back row, we have Kathy Warren, Lane Winesett, Emily Bazemore, Marshall Coleman, Christine Gay, and we have our esteemed traffic engineer with us today, Rick Lohman. Did I miss anybody? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. One of the things that's a pleasure in the summer to see is we have interns that work with the staff during the summer, and it's nice to look out and see some nice young smiling faces of folks that are in college learning how to be planners. So welcome, interns. The first order of business is the explanation of the rules that we use to run our meetings. Commissioner Rosinski, the secretary, will explain these rules for us.
Thank you, Chairman Thornton. The Virginia Beach Planning Commission takes pride in being fair and courteous to all parties in attendance. It is important that all understand how the Commission normally conducts its meetings. It's equally important that everyone treat each other with respect and civility. The Commission requests that if you have a cell phone to please silence it or turn it off at this time. This is an abbreviated explanation of the rules. A complete set of the rules is located in the front of the Planning Commission agenda for today. Following is the order of business for this public hearing. Withdrawals and deferrals. The chairman will ask if there's a request for any item to be withdrawn or deferred from this agenda. Those requests are then made first. Consent agenda is the second order of business, and that's the consideration of the consent agenda are those items which the Planning Commission believes are unopposed and have favorable staff recommendation. Regular agenda. The commission will then proceed with the remaining items on the agenda. Please note that action taken by the commission today are in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. The final decision for approval or disapproval for any application is made by City Council. The commission thanks you for your attendance. We hope that your experience here today leaves you with the feeling that you've been heard and treated fairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. The next order of business is to address those items to be deferred or withdrawn. Are there any items that an applicant would wish to defer or withdraw at this moment? The chair is aware that the following items have been requested to be deferred. Those are items number 17, 19, and 20. They are items that were brought to us by the City of Virginia Beach in the form of ordinance revision. Is there any opposition to these matters being deferred? Hearing none, may I have a motion to defer items number 17, 19, and 20?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Horsley, second,
Second.
and a second. We got that?
Yes.
Ready to vote?
Ms. Redmond? Mr. Horsley?
By recorded vote of 10-0, items number 17, 19, 20 have been deferred.
Thank you. The next order of business, we will address those items that have been placed on the consent agenda. Commissioner Rosinski will handle this portion of the agenda for us today.
Thank you, Chairman Thornton. The first item on the consent agenda of the 10 that we have today is item number 1, which is Nathan Hicks Walness, an application for a conditional use permit, home occupation, retail sales on property located at 1332 Stringfellow Court, District, Kempsville. Is there a representative for this application? Come forward. Are the conditions acceptable to you?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
State your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, state your name for the record.
It's Nathan Hinch Waikunis.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a kind of a wacky name, but
Yeah, thank you very much.
no worries.
Is there any opposition to this application being placed on the consent agenda? Okay, you can have a seat.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so since we have no opposition, the chair has asked Commissioner David Weiner to read this into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Rosinski. This is a conditional use permit for home occupation sales for firearms. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for home occupation for retail sales in order to sell firearms and related accessories from a single-family dwelling. The applicant possesses to operate a federal firearms license. 5 hand-to-hand sales transactions will be per month. The applicant will complete the required state and federal background checks before transferring the firearms to the buyer. Items will be stored in a secured steel vault. No sign to advertise the business. And the City of Virginia Beach Police Department will conduct a security assessment of the home. We have recommended approval and put it on a consent agenda.
Thank you. The next item is item number 2, and that is an application for Ronald F. Wason Jr., and that's an application for a conditional use permit for a motor vehicle rental on property located at 519 North Witchduck Road, District Bayside. Can you please state your name for the record?
I'm speaking for Ronald Geeson. That's my husband. My name is Bridget Whitbeck.
Okay, and are the applications acceptable?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. You may be seated. Okay, the chair has asked Commissioner Dave Redmond to read that into the record.
Mr. Chairman, this is an application for a conditional use permit for motor vehicle rentals, and in this case specifically U-Haul vehicles. The applicant has actually been renting these vehicles on the site, was unaware he needed a conditional use permit. It was discovered and now has gone through this process. He has 13 parking spaces on the site, which is 2 more than required under the code. And as a result, is going to rent 2 vehicles, U-Haul vehicles, from this site and still be within the code. As you can see from the graphic, it will be placed behind the building. The site is appropriate to this use. It's operated before without incident. There is no opposition of which we are aware, and the Planning Commission grants it by consent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is number 3. An application for Brittany Primer is a conditional use permit for family daycare on property located at 1001 Eagle Point Drive, District Centerville. And that is my district. Do we have an application for that? And can you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Brittany Primer.
Are the conditions acceptable?
Yes.
All right, thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an application requesting a conditional use permit for a family home daycare for up to 12 children in a single-family residence. The property has an enclosed backyard for the children to play safely in. The proposed hours of operation for this particular daycare will be 24 hours a day, which includes weekends as needed for staff, for shift work and military. The typical hours of operation are from 5 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. The proposed conditional use permit for this request, in staff's opinion, is consistent with the comprehensive plan land use for the residential area. And it also does provide a valuable service to the families that live in the suburban area. To alleviate the potential for congestion of client parking in the right-of-way, staff recommends that alternate pickup and drop-off times are provided. For the reasons stated above, the staff approves this application, and the applicant is good with the conditions. Therefore, we have placed this on the consent agenda. Okay, the next item on the consent agenda is item number 5 for H&S Development Group, LLC, which is an application for a conditional use permit for a communication tower on property located at 1236 Prosperity Road, District Beach. Is there an application here? Applicant here? Can you state your name for the record?
CE4N, representing H&S Development.
Okay, are the conditions acceptable?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. The chair has asked Commissioner Jeff Hodgner to read this into the record.
Thank you, Jan. Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to construct a communication tower on the rear of this parcel, which is behind the existing Elks Lodge. The tower is proposed as a steel, self-supported monopole with exterior housed radio equipment at its base. The tower itself will be 156 feet high with a 3-foot tall lightning rod on top for a total height of 159 feet. A 15-foot wide access easement is proposed to provide vehicular access to the leased area. Staff finds this application for conditional use permit for the construction of this tower acceptable. The commission agrees, and we have placed it on our consent agenda.
All right. The next item to be consent is item number 11 for Visions, Inc., and that is an application for a subdivision variance, Section 4.4B of the subdivision regulations on property located at 5558 Daniel Smith Road, District, Kimsville. Can you state your name for the record?
Tony Sansilio.
And are the conditions acceptable?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And the chair has asked Commissioner David Weiner to read this into the record.
Thank you. Hold on a second. There we go. This is a request for a subdivision variance. The lot was created by a deed in January 1953. Currently, a mobile home exists on the property. The applicant is proposing to subdivide the existing lot with 2 parcels to construct two single-family dwellings. The proposed lots will be nearly 21,000 square feet each. Each of the lots is proposed with a lot width of 66.17 feet, which is deficient in meeting the minimum lot width requirements of 75 feet for parcels in R75 residential zoning. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a subdivision variance to the lot width requirements. We have recommended approval and put on the consent agenda.
All right, thank you.
You know what we did? We skipped
6.
5?
5.
5.
Skip 6.
I'm sorry, 6. You skipped 6.
Did you read 5 into the record?
I did.
How about 6?
I have not.
Okay, we need to go back to 6.
My apologies.
That's okay.
Okay, item number 6 is Greenway Towing LLC, trading as Aristocat Towing, is an application for modification of proffers and a modification of conditions for bulk storage yard on property located at 600 Washington Avenue, District Beach.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosinski.
Sorry, I did not mean to skip
That's
over you.
okay. Chairman Thornton, members of the commission, for the record, Eddie Burdon, Virginia Beach Attorney, representing both Greenway Towing and also 800 Block Properties LLC on this application. The 6 conditions as recommended by staff are acceptable, and appreciate the work of Jonathan Sanders and appreciate being on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
all.
The chairman has asked Commissioner Jeff Hodgson to read that into the record.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, a conditional rezoning from A12 to conditional B2 was approved in 2001. This conditional use permit was for a bulk storage with a 10-year time limit. That expired in 2012, and they came back and had an additional 5 years of an extension on that conditional use permit. It has since expired again, and they are requesting an additional 5 years for the same use. One thing that's important to note on this is condition 6. This conditional use permit is valid for 5 years from the date of City Council's approval or when one of the following occurs prior to the end of the 5-year term. And one of them is the land use on the property at 853 Virginia Beach Boulevard changes to something other than an automobile service and repair. And the other one is the land use on the adjacent property to the south changes to something other than a residential trailer park. The planning department is approval of this application, and the commission agrees, and we have placed it on our consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item is item number 12, Christopher Stankus, an application for a conditional use permit for commercial kennel on property located at 3612 West Neck Road, District, Princess Anne. Is there a representative here for that application?
I think they're still negotiating those conditions.
If we could come back to this item, that'd be preferred, I believe.
So we are taking that back to here?
Yeah, we have to hear that one out.
Okay.
Have to hear that one, okay.
Okay, so we will move on to item number 13, which is Edith Moore, an application for a conditional use permit, family daycare, home care on property located at 164 Onondaga Road, District, Bayside. Is there a applicant here for that? Can you come forward and state your name for the record, please?
Edith Monroe.
And are the applications acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. You can have a seat. So the chair has asked Dave Redmond to read that into the record.
Mr. Chairman, this is an application for a conditional use permit for a family daycare. The applicant has requested to care for up to 12 children within her home. She has extensive experience in child care services. The site has a fenced-in backyard with play equipment and some other amenities that are consistent with that kind of use, as you can see there on the board. The hours of operation would be limited to about 12 hours. There are a number of conditions, and they're the usual suspect kind of conditions that we typically require. Arrival and departure times staggered. The applicant has to maintain a license with Department of Social Services. In all respects, this seems to meet the standards for a conditional use permit for this sort of site. We're unaware of any opposition, and the commission consents. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next item on the consent agenda is item number 15, Princess Anne Hotel LLC, which is an application for conditional rezoning B2 Community Business District to conditional B4 mixed use on the property located at the northeast intersection of Princess Anne Road and Community College Place, District, Centerville.
Hi, I'm Randy Royal. I'm representing this project.
Are the conditions acceptable?
They are. I'd like to mention, though, the building rendering is being swapped out with what staff has shown you, so that will be what's moving forward formally.
Okay, thank you. The chairman has asked Commissioner Ron Ripley to read that into the record.
This is a rezoning of a property from B2 to B4 mixed use, and it's on a 6.46 acre parcel of land. The city has been interested in having it developed as a hotel for some time. It's right at the entrance to Tidewater Community College, and it's being proposed to be developed with a 5,200 square foot restaurant, freestanding, and two 120-unit hotels. And you saw the elevation up there with Hampton Inn. Is adequate parking laid out. It's something, again, the city's been looking for. We understand that the applicant and the city will work together and sometimes in the future on hotel management, maybe some courses offered within the community college. And so that's a really nice twist to it. There's no one opposing this that we know of. It's been something that's been looked to for quite some time, and we felt it should be on the consent agenda, and it was recommended by staff to be on the consent, or it was recommended by staff for approval. So we placed it on consent.
All right, thank you. And the last item on the consent agenda is item number 15. That's an application for the City of Virginia Beach, an ordinance to amend Section 104 of the city zoning ordinance pertaining to the maximum and minimum misdemeanor fines for violation. And the city attorney, Kay Wilson, will read that into the record.
Item 18 is a revision to the code, the city zoning ordinance, that has been necessitated by a revisions to state code that has deleted the minimum fines for misdemeanor violations of the zoning ordinance and has established a step program for the maximum fines so that with each violation and each consecutive violation, the fines would increase.
Thank you. Chairman, that is the last item on the consent agenda, so I would like to make an motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 11, 13, 15, and 18.
I have a motion to approve the consent items. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Redmond.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I need to abstain from agenda item number 15. I have a business relationship with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Any other abstentions? Are we ready to vote?
Vote is open.
All right, by recorded vote of 10-0, items number 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 11, 13, 15, and 18 have been approved by consent, with Commissioner Hodgson abstaining from item number 15.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the applicants who had a matter on the consent agenda for today's meeting. These items will now be scheduled for the city council agenda. So be aware of when that's going to happen and be ready to come see the city council when they put it on their agenda. Again, thank you for your time, and thank you, staff, for the work in this work. The next order of business, and those that are on the consent agenda are certainly free to leave. The next order of business will address the remaining matters on the agenda. The staff secretary will call these items for public hearing.
All right, the first item we will hear is item number 4, Lynn Haven Area Properties, LLC. This is an application for conditional use permit, car wash and automotive repair garage on property located near a corner of Laskin Road and Regency Drive. This is in the Beach District. If you could please state your name for the record.
Yes, Bob Miller with MSA. And thank you again, Chairman Thornton and members of the commission. I think everything is in order except the cash vacuums that you all had talked about and was recommended by staff to be removed from the front, not from, we could have them on the property, but not be able to have them on Regency Drive. And I just wanted to note a couple of things. Obviously, in looking at the architecture of what we're doing a high-quality facility, and if we can, let's look, see if this thing works still. Yeah, it does. That's one of the pictures. There's an updated picture, which is this one on the left, and then the one on the right also. So we are really taking a architectural area that perhaps, without disrespect to the other facilities in the area, could use a little upgrade. So I took time to roll around in my, with my wonderful telephone camera and take a few pictures. What you're going to see from those is that the facility, the property that we're on has a large stand of trees between us and the adjacent neighborhoods, one of which is a apartment project and the other is single family. There is a ditch in there inside that stand of trees, but it's well inside the stand of trees. We're not going to take down the trees, so we're going to leave all of them. They're natural, and that's kind of the backdrop of the first two pictures. I did accidentally, but on purpose maybe, catch the Circle K air machine, which sits up next to the road. And I just want to, again, just say that what we're doing is providing a top-quality facility in that area that's going to really make a nice statement for the community and for our owners, the McCleskey's, and to be able to have this facility where it is without dealing with the trees. Now, this is the tree, this is actually where my surveyors picked it up. That's actually the limits of the tree. So the physical body of the tree is back in that line a little bit, but I don't want to, we're trying to stay out of it altogether. And that's why we positioned it where we did. These are the cash vacs, and obviously as you go through the car wash, you come out, you go and you vacuum your vehicle here. There are 20 vacuum facilities here, 20. Not to overemphasize, but obviously they're there for the operation of the facility and to give the convenience to the people that are using our car wash to be able to get to a place to vacuum. So we're putting 6 cash ones in front of it, and we're 13 feet off the right-of-way. I've talked to staff about that. They already know what I'm going to say, and that is I've got 20 vacs there, and you're telling me that these 6 vacs somehow or another are really intrusive. No disrespect, but I don't think I agree with that. And we can provide a little more room in here. I can slant these at 45 degrees, catch up more green space if you'd like to have some more green space. Some of the pictures are also of, again, the kangaroo and the lack of any landscaping. It's been there a long time. I'm not trying to say that they have to go back and plant the landscaping. And then also of the oil change facility that was just built on the other side, and there is landscaping there, so we understand that we should provide some landscaping. But we would really like to have these cash vacs here. They will be shut down at the same time everything else is, so it's not a case that these are going to be open 24/7 and somebody's going to roll in there at 2 o'clock in the morning to vacuum their car. They may roll in, but they're not going to be able to vacuum their car. I'm not going to prevent them from driving through there. And that, again, we're in conformance with everything else that you all have asked for. This is the one particular item that we'd like to have flexibility with being able to put these out here. Again, we will create some landscaping if that's, we will have landscaping, obviously, in conformance with the site plan ordinance. Also, there will be air facility, a place to get air for the tires and so forth, and where that goes, we'll make sure that's on the site somewhere that's not intrusive. But, that's my presentation and asking your consideration for letting us push the cash, keep the cash vacs up here. Even in a realignment, I've got 13 feet. I can probably get 15, 18 feet. Staff says they want 30 feet. I'm not sure. I think I'd still like for you all to be able to see the building after we put the landscaping up, because it really is a beautiful building. And that's, I'd like to be happy to answer any questions and discuss this.
Any questions for Mr. Miller? Jan?
I just want to make sure that I understand. So I think, because sitting around the table earlier this morning, I think a lot of our concern was people being able to go at any time and use the cash vac. So they won't be operational when the facility is not open?
Correct. They will also be stopped from operations once the facility is shut down at night.
Okay, that was my big concern. Thank you.
And won't open until the next morning.
I think I understand where the ones you're asking about are. Can you point to them with your pointer? Where those right there?
These 6 right here.
Okay.
Other questions? David?
If you do slant them, how much more room would it give you to put more landscaping in? I guess here's my big concern. The car wash on Independence Boulevard across from Mount Trashmore.
Right.
It's my first year doing this, and I didn't realize what we could do. And some people say that's really, when you drive by there and all you see is these big wires just sticking out, it's not very presentable. And we just wanted to clean it up just a little bit so you don't see all these big wires
Well,
sticking out from the other vacs. So if there could be.
these actually will, in our rendering, the architect shows them as having those, the same, that group of, that circle there. They do not have them. He doesn't know that. It wasn't his
Well,
fault.
I
He just
think
knew it.
what we're thinking about is the front landscaping will block the back ones also a little bit. If we could get a little bit more front landscaping by those vacuum.
I mean, I'm happy to cooperate with some amount. Obviously, again, I don't want to prevent people from being able to see the building. As you know, we're going to go to the BZA to try to get a sign out on Laskin. And there's a signal at that at Regency where it hits Laskin, and you can probably imagine that the road sits up pretty high there. You can see the building. But I do think that, we'll add landscaping here, but I don't want to imply that it's going to totally block, as if to say you won't be able to see the building. That'd be self-defeating, I think. But I will increase, and how much could I increase it? 3, 5 feet, somewhere in there.
Jeff?
I think two of my concerns were taken away. One was, how are you going to control this? But you're saying it's going to be shut off at 9 o'clock. That's gone. What you just told David, I didn't realize that the overhead hoses were going to be gone. So that's going to take away a lot. You're willing to put a little more landscaping in front of those to shield them a little more. I pretty much took away my concerns there. So you answered all my questions. Thank you.
Jack?
What about, you've got 20 vacuums associated with the building?
Yes.
Could 6 of those be paid?
They could, but if you look at our traffic pattern, that would mean that we'd have to rearrange things so that people would be able to go into that area and drive through. They're set up for the people that go through the car wash.
Right.
And so our customers, as each of us knows, how long does it take to vacuum? If you vacuum my car, it's probably not too long. If you vacuum my wife's car, it may take a little longer. No disrespect to the ladies. My son's car too. Let's go over there, okay? So I don't know how long, we're just this is based on a model that comes from our manufacturer, our supplier, that tells us this is how many we need. Okay.
Other questions? Karen?
So I follow Jeff's thinking in that they'll be shut down at night. You take off the hoses.
Yeah.
Both of those are amenities to the project. How many feet can you give us to add additional landscaping when you
13
change
feet.
that design to a vertical? That's what you said?
Say
You're going to
again?
put them on like an angle?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, not
I
a
can
vertical, an
shape
angle? You're
those-
going to put them on an angle?
Because those spaces, we're using a one-way aisle.
Right.
We can put them at 45 or 60 degrees, which will, obviously, they'll still be just as deep at 13 feet, but I can probably give you 3 more feet there easily, 2 or 3 more feet with
So
that point.
2 or
And the
3,
rest
and it
of
was 3
and
or
the rest
5.
of-
So I'm just asking, which one do you think you can probably give me?
Let me go. We draw a picture.
While you're doing the math on that,
I'm
Bob,
not doing the math.
He's not doing the math.
They don't let me
I just
do
want
math
to,
anymore.
I want a figure instead of
Okay.
2 to 3 or 3 to 5.
When you do,
Which one are we
when
going
we
to
do
get?
the angle, I gain all this area.
Right? You're
So
just not
I-
sure what that is yet?
It could be as much as 4 or 5 feet that
Okay.
I will have.
Mhm.
This is a 9-foot dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So if Jack will do the calculations for the triangle, since I'm not allowed to do
Mm-hmm.
them. But seriously, it'll be, there's a significant area that we'll have to be able to add landscaping
Mhm.
in that area if I turn these at an angle.
Okay.
Will that affect the people being able to back out and go?
No, but it's
Yeah.
one-way drive aisle.
Oh, it's
so
one way already.
We're
Okay.
trying not to have that two-way traffic. It really is.
Actually, it makes it easier, I think, for people to know
I
which
think
way
so,
to back
too.
out and go.
I think so
Now,
too.
we angled the others as you see. They're at
Yeah.
60 degrees.
I like that. All those.
So you'll be using this car
aspects.
wash, right?
It's too far away for me to drive. I'll do it in my driveway.
the question I had, Bob, the spaces up against the building, they're also vacuum spaces, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Both the ones, okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Bob? Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing and receive comments from members of the commission. Anybody, Jeff, Mike?
I just echo what Jeff said, since he's already said it. I don't want to make him say it again. But, I think that the applicant has given us what we were really looking for in terms of aesthetics, and I think it's a good application. I just
Jack?
support it.
I mean, I think it's an aesthetically nice building, but, I still I'm in favor of not having those 6 spaces up front. So, I mean, that's just my position.
Okay, Jeff Hodgson.
I'd make a motion to approve agenda item number, what is it?
4.
4.
4.
Second.
Okay.
Does that
But
include
that's-
the 6 space?
It includes the discussion we just had about him working the 6 spaces so that they're angled at either a 45 or 60-degree angle, and the shutting off of the pumps at 9 o'clock, or the vacuums at 9 o'clock, and what was the other one?
Additional landscape.
Additional landscaping around the front.
Give me that condition.
Yes, I'd like to have that written into the conditions.
And we have a second, correct?
Second.
Ready to vote? Vote is open.
By a recorded vote of 9-1, item number 4, Lynn Haven Area Properties LLC has been approved with conditions as amended.
All right, now we're going to 12.
Right. Next, we will hear items number 7, 8, 9, and 10. Walmart Real Estate Business Trust at properties 1149 and 1169 Nemo Parkway, 546 First Colonial Road, 2021 Lynn Haven Parkway, and 647 Phoenix Drive. If there's an applicant present, please step to the podium and state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name's Tom Klein. I'm a partner with the firm Troutman Sanders. It's also been my privilege for a number of years to serve as counsel to Walmart stores for all the projects that they do here in Virginia. And I'm here on behalf of these 4. I realize that we have 4 applications, one after another. I'll proceed with the first one, and then if we want to go on into the next one, however the chair wishes to proceed. The first application that we have is with respect to the project that we have on Nemo Parkway. And this application, as you all know, is for the ability for us to have temporary trailers, storage trailers, in the back of the store, on the side of the store, to help us prepare for the holiday season. We're proposing limitation of 20, no more than 20 containers. There are a number of conditions that we've worked very closely with the staff on over the course of the last few weeks to address. They're all acceptable to Walmart. Obviously, the location of them would have to be acceptable to the fire marshal and to the planning director. They're within a defined area that's shown on the site plan. There would be no hazardous materials that would be stored in any of the containers. And again, there's strict limits on the number and limits on the time frame in which they would need to be removed. The area of the site, if you have been out there, is an area that is predominantly where you have truck traffic and loading. It's located behind the strip center that is adjacent to the Walmart store. It's also bordered on the other side. That does not look like it. It's also bordered on the other side by a very mature hedge of trees. And that area, there's a site plan that everyone has in their packet that shows the precise location. They would typically be uniform in size, stacked next to one another in that location. We have heard no objections from any of the adjacent property owners. One of the property owners actually signed the application because part of that site is in a shared area with the Lake Gem developers that own the balance of the shopping center. Now, let me speak to the concern about containers. Mr. Ripley, I read the transcript from a couple years ago, and I also heard Mr. Redmond and Mr. Horsley, the comments that when we had the session earlier. And I know that there was a concern of, okay, we had this discussion 2 years ago, where are we now? And I want to assure you all, Walmart takes those concerns, this issue, very seriously. We have every single store manager for all 5 Walmart supercenters in Virginia Beach here today. We have the market manager for this whole part of Virginia has come here today to discuss the logistics issues. We also have someone from the corporate office here, Ms. Lori Smalling-Letts, who's Senior Director for Government Affairs. We've also reached out to some of the commissioners where these are located in their districts. We had the privilege of meeting with Dr. Kwasny out at the site with the store manager for a period of time the other day to show the location, to talk about the logistics issues, and talk about what we're doing. Some of these, this one, we're asking for 20. Some of them are a more limited number, and we'll speak to those as we get to them. The issue is that these stores, while we're trying to manage inventory as best we can, these stores happen to be very popular and very successful stores, and we're trying to keep the stores successful in a climate in which the retail market has changed dramatically, even in the 2 years since that approval was granted a couple years ago. We've had a situation where we've got the Toys R Us that has gone out of business recently. The Babies R Us has gone out of business. I know the Sears across from our office at Town Center is going to be closing. And even with the Babies R Us closure, our store manager has mentioned that she's seen an uptick in the demand for some of that merchandise. So we also have seen a huge change in the online shopping environment. People are sitting at home, they're texting, they're saying, I want this TV and I want it delivered to that store and I want to be able to get there and pick it up. And we've tried to configure the sites to facilitate that, to minimize, the number of people in the store so that they can come. You may notice we've done some restriping at some of the stores. We've added some locations in the parking lot where people can text in advance, come, pick their merchandise up, do some of the online grocery. But we're trying to adjust to that. But all that also means is the stores are still staying very busy, and the sales are continuing, and so what this effort is, during the holiday season, it is an extremely demanding time, particularly for toys and for some of the merchandise that's a little bit larger, bicycles and things like that are difficult to just continuously restock and keep on the shelves. And they're doing what they can. When the garden center, fortunately, this is a large store. It has a large storage area in the back. When the garden center is not occupied with plant material, and this has a large garden center, when it's not occupied during the planting season, we try to use some of that space to maximize the additional merchandise. But what this comes down to is the ability for the customer to have the merchandise on the shelf that they're asking for. And so, and they're working on that. They're working on logistics. You'll see lots of trucks coming to the stores frequently to keep the merchandise going, to keep them moving, to keep them restocked. But when you get into that super high demand period, particularly as you lead up to Black Friday and get past Christmas, the demand is really pressing on these stores. They're working to do the best to manage it as best we can. I heard some comments earlier. This happens to be one of our bigger stores. Some of the stores that we're doing now are smaller. The one that we'll talk about in a few minutes, First Colonial, smaller. We're asking for less trailers there to just get us over the hump. But I mean, that's kind of the thrust of what we're at. And so we're looking at these stores and we're saying, okay, what can we do that can allow us to keep the merchandise to meet the customer demands? And another thing that Walmart does that some stores don't do is the layaway option. There are a lot of our customers that don't have the ability to pay for the merchandise right away, but need to know that it's going to be available there for Christmas. And particularly as you get to the holiday season, you're having our customers coming to us asking for that merchandise that maybe we're storing and trying to get us really through the Thanksgiving push, I'd really say. Once we get past that, closer to Christmas, there's less demand to have that storage there. But that's the purpose. I mean, I think the good news is, as we're seeing retailers, and frankly, there have been some Walmart stores that I've taken through the entitlement process in the Mid-Atlantic that they've ultimately decided, let's not pursue that store. The good news is these stores are successful. These stores are doing well. Virginia Beach has been one of the only markets in the Mid-Atlantic where they opened a new store last year. That's the one at First Colonial that we'll talk about in a few minutes. We're employing over 2,200 people in Virginia Beach. We've got these 5 supercenters. They're doing well. We're doing our best to adjust to it, and we're trying to do it in a way that's not intrusive, that's not objective. I don't know any adjacent property owner who's called. I know that we put them on a 2-year limit a couple years ago. I don't know that in that 2 years that anybody has called us. I asked the zoning administrator a couple months ago, have we heard any concerns from adjacent property owners? I've not heard of any. People know to call me. Adjacent property owners out there have not called us to let us know about them. And we've also tried to do them in an area that's really not going to affect the customer experience going to that shopping center. You drive into that Red Mill Walmart, you're not going to see these. The only way you're going to see them is if you go all the way behind, all the way around that hedge, and up into our loading area, and that's where they'll be just for that limited period of time. So, we respect and we hear the concerns that you all mentioned, but that's what we're trying to adjust to. We've got an online issue. We've got an extremely dynamic change in the marketplace right now, and we're trying to keep the merchandise out there. Now, I heard a comment earlier, well, what do you do where you can't have the containers, or, there's some jurisdictions that they're outright prohibited, and we have to adjust. But the adjustment in that situation may be just not having the merchandise that the customers are looking for, so they'll go to another jurisdiction or go somewhere else. Or in a lot of jurisdictions, we are allowed to have them subject to certain conditions by right, actually. In some jurisdictions, we're allowed to have them by right. We try to work with the jurisdiction, make sure that they're not offensive, that they're not obtrusive, that we don't have adjacent property issues, that they're in compliance with zoning requirements, and to try to adjust that. So that, that's kind of the story. We take this seriously. They take their stores very seriously here in Virginia Beach because they're so successful. And, we were out there, what was it, Monday or Tuesday afternoon, in the middle of the afternoon, and there were people that were coming who were vacationing here, buying beach supplies, buying all kinds of supplies, buying their groceries, looking for beach chairs. That store, with all its 450 employees, is serving the community. And that's all they're asking for, is to be able to continue to do that for this limited period of time. And I did hear the comment earlier, well, gosh, that seems like an awful long amount of time. That's not the holiday season, September 15th through. We really asked for that 4 months just to make sure that if a trailer shows up a little bit earlier or whatever, there's a layaway demand, that we don't have a situation where we're in violation of the zoning ordinance. As a practical matter, I think that Ms. Conway, who is the store manager, will tell you they're not there that long. You're not going to have 20 trailers out there from September 15th through January 15th. And as a practical matter, once she has the containers there and the merchandise is out of them, she doesn't have any need for them to continue to be there. So she calls them up and says, please remove these. But again, we ask for 20, so that if there's 20 out there at any given time, again, we're not having a zoning violation or we're not having a situation. So we would certainly, again, we brought the whole team, every store manager, the market manager, someone from the corporate office. We're happy to answer any questions, but we want you to know we did look at the transcript. And we did discuss the transcript with the planning staff from the discussions that you had 2 years ago. And we're working on it, but we're trying to keep these stores successful in a very dynamic and changing market. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions. All of the conditions that we've reviewed with the staff are acceptable to us. And again, I'm not aware of any objections or anyone here in opposition.
Questions for Mr. Klein? Mr. Redmond?
So you said, so you said that in instances where, in a jurisdictions where you can't get approval for this, the store adapts, right?
Well, when I would say adapt, if you can't have them, then there might be merchandise that people are asking for that you just can't provide.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Or there might not be the ability to do the layaway or to offer that service or to offer the merchandise. So it's really just about being able to provide the merchandise that people are asking for at that store.
What are some jurisdictions where you can't do that in the Commonwealth of Virginia? Are you aware of any?
I would have to go back and research. I'm not aware
We heard
of
my
any.
concern this morning is, I don't like doing this with no context.
Right.
I mean,
I know in Chesapeake, they're permitted, certain subject, you get a lot of containers subject to certain requirements. I know in Norfolk, you're allowed to do them subject to certain requirements. Some cases, you may have a zoning overlay district, such as Town Center, for example, where we have it screened, and, unless it's like a special event or something, there's certain restrictions on having them there. I'd say that puts a big burden on that store, too. Again, Town Center is a dynamic area. We put our office there at the very beginning, so I know how dynamic it is. I've watched it grow up outside my window. A few years ago, people said, well, we're not sure that a Walmart makes sense at Town Center. Is Walmart compatible with Town Center model and all that? So again, that was a by right site. That was that old Bill's Flea Market, and we worked with the staff, Walmart, some of these folks, the corporate office worked with the planning staff and did a Town Center Walmart there, even though it wasn't required fully by the zoning ordinance, to try to have something that fits in with that environment. But that's a hard issue at the holidays, to be honest with you, because the reality is you've got all these people saying, gee, I'd like to put this on layaway, I'd like to have access to that equipment, I'd like to have that bicycle, and we may be in a situation there just saying, I'm sorry, we can't do that.
why is that unique to Walmart?
Why is that unique to Walmart?
I'm unaware of any other retailer that we've had that's come before us that's asked for trailers.
Well, I don't think it's unique that we have had trailers at some of our stores. I think it's a lot of just meeting kind of the customer demand and trying to make sure that the merchandise is available and keeping them successful. I don't represent, I know you mentioned Target, I don't represent Target, so I don't know their store, and to be honest with you, I don't know that they don't have trailers at their sites. Perhaps they don't at the Hilltop site. But
We haven't seen them. I mean, Walmart is the only retailer I'm aware of that's ever come before us that's asked for trailers around Christmas time. As I said this morning, Kohl's doesn't do it, Target doesn't do it. To the extent that there are any JCPenney's, they don't do it. I mean, these retailers that you're talking about before, I've never seen it from Sears or Kmart. For some odd reason, this is particular just to Walmart. And I look at these shopping centers and I think to myself, wouldn't any other retailer be inclined to come and say, yeah, we'd like a trailer? What about Big Lots, which is, in adjacent to that store in one spot? Or, or another retailer in some place just said, we could use one too. I mean, I don't think we want to encourage this notion that if you have a store and you're busy in Christmas, because they're all busy at Christmas, from the guy that's 1,200 square feet and he just sells shoes to, a couple 100,000 square foot Walmart, yeah, you're going to face greater strains at Christmas time. But I don't know that's something going forward that we ought to think is just sort of assumed that that's okay to do that, because we do have site plans. And they do, yeah, those four walls will cause some, some constraints. And so, and the changing retail environment is challenging for anybody. This is the only retailer that I'm aware of in whatever 11 years of doing this that's ever asked for this. And I don't know that it's necessarily fair to everybody, because I would think everybody would want at least one. What the heck? I'm selling a lot of shoes out of my 1,200 square foot store. So anyway, that's my concern. So I hear what you're saying about it makes it easier at Christmas time and you're moving a bunch of stuff around, and I understand all that. But those are constraints that every retailer faces.
But I do think, some of our merchandise is all different sizes. You've got a lot of bicycles, you've got toys, you have things like that. And our stores are just very successful. I mean, they are. They're extremely busy, very successful stores here. The model is such that, a lot of people, we've got a lot of traffic through these stores. I don't know what the traffic counts are through other retailers. I think you also have a code that would permit other retailers to ask, in their discretion. And I think, again, we're doing it in a very unobtrusive way. I mean, this is literally behind the shopping center in an area that's almost enclosed on four sides, because you've got the back of another retailer behind us, retailer on two sides, and then this very mature hedge. So, we're not asking to put them out in the parking field. We're not asking to have them there indefinitely, but we're asking so that we can get through, this push. And that is, I think that's the reality of the situation. I'll ask, where people go, Lori or the market manager, if they have anything that they want to add to what we've said there. But I mean, that's that's what we have during that period of time.
Ron, question?
Tom, if you read this verbatim, you know that what I think was said at the very beginning last year is that we're ecstatic that the commerce is there, and we want the commerce to continue. And, and the idea of what the discussion we had was in good faith was, how do we do that? What kind of plan can you come forward with to help solve this problem in the long term and not have that? Because it was an objectionable then, and you can see it really hasn't changed as far as the way I think this commission kind of looks at it. And, when I think about Walmart, Walmart has written, how many books have been written about inventory supply chain management? I mean, it's been studied in the highest business institutions in the country over and over again because it's so efficient. And here we got this, what we're looking at here says inefficiency, and it doesn't seem to line up with their philosophy to me. And I think what was important to me last time is that the managers did come in and they said, yeah, we know we got this problem. We think we can solve it. And I realize things do change in the marketplace. And if the commerce is really doing well, then there may be another way to solve it. And I think, if I heard this morning, I think maybe at the most some additional time to help solve it might be palatable. But this being a long-term solution I don't think that's the solution.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Ripley. And we did share that transcript, obviously, with the leadership that's here. And it has been a changing environment just in those 2 years. The demand on that store, I'm talking about the Red Mill, just continues to go up, as we discussed with Dr. Kwasny out there, which is great for Virginia Beach. It's great for everyone. And so to the extent, 2 years ago they were looking, and I know that Ms. Conway, the store manager, they've looked to reconfigure areas in the back. They've looked to try to establish more efficiencies in keeping merchandise on the shelf, keeping the shelves stocked so that, you're not going in there and saying, oh my gosh, there's none of this item, but it's all back in a storage locker in the back. I mean, she had mentioned they're trying to keep 10+ items of each thing continuously stocked on those shelves so that you're coming in, you're looking for something, it's there. And we're also, again, trying to have additional efficiencies with respect to the fleet of the Walmart trucks that you see coming, getting the stores offloaded, getting the merchandise in off the shelves.
But in that,
And-
their inventory model, I mean, their inventory model is that the warehouse knows exactly when they need something and it's moved up, as opposed to putting it out in the parking lot.
And for that limited period of time, though, there's just not that room. We've got so many people coming into these stores asking for certain items to keep that merchandise continuously on the shelves, to keep them successful. You do have that big press. And as I said, we're asking for the 4 months. As a practical matter, it's not really 4 months of trailers. I mean, we're having that window just so you don't have a situation where we're in violation, but it's really a big push over a shorter compressed period of time, Black Friday, those
I hear
times.
what you're asking, but let
Right.
me ask this. It would, and I'm not speaking for everybody up here, but if you had another year or two to help solve this issue, would you be willing in good faith to work on that and get it done, or not? I mean, it buys you time, but,
Right.
and something you said in your presentation, I want to take exception to, and that is that you didn't hear anything from the staff. It's incumbent on the applicant to solve the problem, not staff to have to go out and solve the problem for the
I'm
applicant.
sorry if I misspoke.
It sounded like nobody has contacted you in the 2 years about
Oh,
this issue.
no. What I was saying was I had checked this, I didn't, no,
that's
what I
what
checked was, had there been one from the community called to complain that there was a zoning violation or some issue associated with them being out there?
Oh, okay.
That's what I had asked. Yeah, no, I certainly didn't. We had many discussions with the staff, and we were very familiar with
But
the
it's
issues.
incumbent on you
2
to
years
solve
ago.
the problem.
Oh, we understand that.
Okay.
We understand that. We understand that. Yeah, and may I introduce, this is Lori Smalling-Letts with Walmart Corporate Office.
Good morning. Thank you, or good afternoon. Thank you for the time. As I sit here, I've been with Walmart for 17 and a half years, and I completely understand your concerns, but I've seen a drastic change in retail in the time that I've been with the company. And we are a good corporate citizen.
Yeah.
We provide, as Tom has already said, we provide 2,400 jobs in Virginia Beach. We've given back over $2 million annually to your community through food donations, through CHKD, through local organizations. We've also, with just taxes in the state of Virginia, so state and local taxes, over $109 million that are coming back through tax dollars. So yes, we are a corporate citizen that is operating in your city, within your city. I have worked, as I said, with Walmart for 17 and a half years, so I've been at federal, state, local, international, working with governments on how we engage and how we support the communities we serve. And I understand your concern about our inventory management, but our stores are built to basically serve customers 9 months out of the year. That other additional, there's the influx of traffic. I was just visiting with Melissa, who has this store. She has 60,000 customers coming through her door during the holidays. She has an increase in millions of dollars of inventory that's coming in. So I understand the just-in-time, and pretty much, most of the year, we are able to do just-in-time inventory. But our just-in-time inventory now is just-in-time for the store, the customer that wants to be there, just-in-time for that parent that doesn't want the big item to be shipped to their house, but they can pick it up at store and they don't have to pay a shipping fee. I just did it this last year. We were buying a shuffleboard table for our boys, and it was from Santa. We didn't have it shipped to the house. It would have been free to go to the house, but it was free to go to the store. We went to the store because we didn't want it on the front step when we came home and didn't know what the box was going to say to surprise what Santa was bringing. So there's a changing dynamic. And when you ask about finding an internal solution to be able to do this, that would be coming back, and that would be multi-million-dollar expansion of trying to add inventory for the 3 months, which we would have to go through all the process and everything else. We're in a time right now that in retail, we are fighting for our lives. When you look at what retail spaces are going, what retailers are going out of business, and the retail space that is actively being used that is going away, where it's not generating sales tax revenue, I'd love to say that we could come in and tell you that for every store in Virginia Beach, we're going to go in and invest $10 million to expand the store so we have inventory space for Christmas. Unfortunately, we're a low-cost retailer. every cost that adds on adds to the cost of doing business and adds to the cost of every item that your constituents would be purchasing at our stores. So we have to evaluate kind of the big picture. And yes, I know trailers don't look great, but you're right, like in all the other jurisdictions that I've worked in, I have had the experience where they understand that we truly, like, I tell people think, oh, you're a retailer. We're actually in the people business. We work to get our associates to serve the customers that come through the door. It just happens to be that the merchandise is what's in between. And there's a lot of merchandise at Christmas time. And it is fortunate that we are having increases in sales. But, you know, as we've been talking to each of these stores, we have online grocery pickup. So we're creating new jobs for those associates to have additional training to be able to serve those customers that want to come in and get their groceries. So we're increasing skill sets. We're investing in our people. We're doing a lot of great things, but we have to be able to serve the customer to be able to stay in business. And so it's just this additional merchandise that we need during the holidays at all of our stores. And, you know, it was one of those things as I've been visiting with some local officials about our community engagement. Everybody was like, well, are you facing the same issues in the other jurisdictions? And we're not, but we have trailers at all of those stores. And so it's, you know, and I have to say, Virginia Beach is absolutely beautiful. Your buildings and everything else. So I understand the pride that you have in making sure you're making the right decisions, but we're trying to make the right decisions for our customers. And by having the merchandise that they want when they need it, being able to have pickup in our local stores where people can order big items for their kids and surprise them, and layaway. A lot of retailers have done away with layaway because it is expensive to store that merchandise and to collect ongoing, but that's our core customer. They need layaway because they can't afford to come in and buy it all at once. So I understand, and I would love to say that we could say, hey, give us another year and we'll come back and we'll have a solution. Unfortunately, I think the only thing at this point is to have, you know, temporary storage to be able to get us through, and we'll continue to work through our inventory and figure out if there are ways that we can reduce the number of trailers. But I also don't want the company to go out of business. I don't want us to have to reduce inventory because people aren't shopping in our stores. And that's what we're facing as you look at the competitive landscape of where retail is going, more and more is going online. And we're here providing jobs in your community. We're providing tax dollars that come directly back to your community, and we're serving your customers that are your constituents. So, I do appreciate you hearing this, but as we were sitting back, I know our stores need this because this is the first issue that I heard when I came into the market last year, is that we have, the city doesn't like us, and it was over trailers. But that's the interpretation of our store managers, because when they came here 2 years ago, the feeling as they walked out was that it was easy for you all to kind of say, well, we don't want to see you and you fix it. They're managing 400 to 450 associates. They're managing millions of dollars of inventory that's flowing through their stores. And unfortunately, they're just trying to make sure that they can accommodate customers and serve the customers with the merchandise they want. And so, well, if you all decide that we have to come back and come out and invest, then, maybe Tom will be coming here saying we're actually closing another store versus building more. But that's the retail environment. As I said, I came into Walmart where we were opening 250 to 300 stores a year. This year alone, we're opening 20. Consumers are changing. Shopping behaviors are changing. But where we can keep our customers shopping in our stores, that's what these store managers are here fighting for, is to make sure we can serve those customers.
Don't go away, we might have some questions. Any questions for Laurie? Mike?
Well, for either of them, I respect what you've saying about what Walmart does for the community. I want to thank you all for that. Our job is to a great degree about aesthetics and keeping our city beautiful. And this has something to do with the storage units that you have. It is still curious that, and I know you guys are smarter than most of them, but nobody else seems to need this. Maybe they haven't figured it out yet. I don't know. But what about other off-site facilities that wouldn't, a warehouse facility, maybe several smaller warehouse facilities that are in an industrial park versus having the trailers right there? I know That's not convenient as far as restocking, not as convenient, but it's an alternative that would eliminate the trailers. Maybe that doesn't work. I mean, I understand. I'm not trying to restructure Walmart here.
Yeah,
But
and we've-
it's just, what alternatives could there be to satisfy?
And we've had those conversations about that, and just from the logistical standpoint. So our trucks come in and bring the trailers, and then they can place them in the parking lot. We don't have short haul. Like, we don't have small trucks that kind of go from point A to point B. And so when you talk about putting it in offsite storage, then it becomes renting U-Hauls, and it becomes finding CBL drivers that would be on the corporate time, and then the liability of having the merchandise and being able to transport it back and forth. So we have had those conversations. I know, Tom, you've had additional conversations even with internal real estate. But, you know, we have the space there. We can have associates go out. We have locks on all of it. We kind of monitor when they're on property. So from that standpoint, it's just, we're set up logistically for long haul, not short haul, just in the way that our logistics system works.
David?
And I want to thank you also. Walmart does a great job around here. I know you are very good corporate citizens for the city of Virginia Beach, doing a fine job. I think it took us by surprise. That's what I think we're pretty much here saying. I'm back on the van ride, even asked Jimmy, I thought this was a done deal. They were going to take care of this. So that's what I think, that's why we're talking about this right now. On the other hand, and I don't think this is about the application, but I think if you looked at the number of people that walked into Walmart compared to Target, it's probably double. And I think that's why they needed containers that the other people don't, because don't take this the wrong way, but if I have to go to Walmart, I go at 5 in the morning where I can get in and out. But still, I think that's why we're here right now, because of the people that go there, about double the amount of people that go to Target. But I think that's why we were a little bit shocked to see this come in front of us again.
And I think, again, we've had those issues with the stores being very successful, and again, just the changes, the retail market changing. You know, our firm represents a lot of other type of entities, and we're seeing so much dramatic change in business over time. I mean, there have been sites, as I mentioned before, that I took through very grueling entitlement processes in other parts of the Mid-Atlantic, and then Walmart ultimately decided we're not going to do those stores. Even though we've been through lawsuits and everything to get them approved, it's changing that much. And as she mentioned, with the mode we used to be in, building so many stores, when last year, I think the only store, I'm pretty sure that this is correct, the only store that they opened in all of Virginia was this one at Hilltop. You know, that's what the change has been. But I think, getting to Mr. Inman's comment, and I respect the concern about the aesthetics, I'm a resident of Virginia Beach, and I appreciate that. We're trying to find, with every one of these applications, the places where they're the most unobtrusive. And no one is going to, you know, you have to go back there to look for them here. And Ms. Conway, who's the store manager, also gave Commissioner Kwasny her word. These things aren't going to be just haphazard scattered around there. You've got a defined box we have to keep them in. We've got an understanding with the adjacent property owner that there's a defined area that they're going to be in. They're going to be uniform. They're going to be stacked. And again, her business model is, as soon as she doesn't need that thing, and she locally had, another thing that has changed is, it used to be that the delivery of these trailers, et cetera, was handled at the corporate level. That's changed, and it's now handled at the store level, as I understand it. So Ms. Conway is going to be there at that store, running that store, and she's going to realize, we don't need these 5 trailers. Call up the folks, get them off the site. And so maybe you're down to 10, maybe you're down to 15 or whatever. But we've deliberately, and you'll see with all the other applications, we've deliberately found spots that are going to have to minimize any kind of aesthetic or adjacent. And the newest one that we have that we'll talk about in a moment, there is some fencing that the staff has asked for because there is an adjacent shopping center. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. So we have been very cognizant of that, sir.
Karen?
I don't have a question. I'm wondering whether or not we're listening to each one of them individually, and then we'll close it so that we can have conversation. Because I think I'm past the point of questions for them. I'm to the point of wanting to make a comment or two that we could discuss.
Well, we're going
I
to
don't know
hear.
when we're going to do that.
We're going to close the public hearing sooner
After we hear all
than
the
later, because I think unless we've got any more specific questions, but we're going to hear their argument all at once, and then we're going to deliberate.
Okay.
We've got to make a decision on each individual
Right.
one, but I don't want to stop. If we've got questions, let's keep asking questions, and Mr. Redmond has.
I do have a question. That's the variation in the number of trailers in each one of these 4 applications. Can you explain it?
Sure.
I would prefer some sort of, specificity and metric, not merely the store manager says 10 or the store manager says 20. I mean, is there something a little more, like Mr. Ripley said, you guys have a pretty well-known and extraordinarily sophisticated logistics and supply management reputation. I'm sure was probably a good bit more specific than that, so 10 versus 20 versus.
Well, I think I can address that probably on a site-by-site basis.
Yeah, each
Because
application's
Some of the
different.
sites, yeah, in this particular site, we have the room. It's one of our larger stores, 200,000, I think 200, where's Ms. Conway? Oh, here's it, 200,000 square feet, right? Yeah, and so I think this is such a big store, between the proximity to all the tourist areas and then the other parts of the city. I think that was, she evaluated that. We also have the space on the side in that area, so that was a 20. With the other stores, we can talk about, some of it was, we have less space. Some of it, the stores are smaller, like the retrofitted Kmart that we did at First Colonial. I think that the Phoenix Avenue.
It's a question I had, actually. What's the square footage of the store at Hilltop?
I'm sorry?
Do you know off the top of your head, the square footage of the store at Hilltop? Somebody asked it this morning, and I don't know.
It's in the range of 150.
Yeah, that's 152,
yeah.
okay.
But it's based off of sales. The metric that they do internally, and this is from the market manager, is that they do look at the sales, that they have of that store and what the increased demand is anticipated to be with the holiday season and that shift. And then they look at, okay, where physically would we be able to house that merchandise based on our historic data of numbers of customers coming in anticipation with the holidays.
Thanks.
And then there are practical limitations based on, do you have space for them? Like Phoenix Drive, we just have that location on the side.
Sure.
Questions on this side and over here? And I see no more hands, I see no more questions. So with that, we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll debate this matter amongst ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, this is just the public hearing on this application?
Because
we do have different issues with the other
Why don't you do
three.
this? Why don't you quickly give us the nuances? There are 4 of them. So we
There
know
are.
Nemo Parkway is 20 containers.
Yes,
We
sir.
know where they're going to be. What about, do the next 3
Right.
in executive summary, because they all should be reasonably similar,
Thank you.
except for Hilltop.
Yes. And then I know with respect to Hilltop, just for purposes of keeping the record, where's our city attorney? We have some gentlemen that are going to want to speak, adjacent property owners, so we want
Okay.
to make sure that the record reflects that opportunity as part
We'll
of
let
that.
that one be last then.
Okay. So if we want, so I think that one in your agenda was actually the next.
That's number 8.
That was number 8. So perhaps if we want to skip now to number 9 and 10.
9 is Lynn Haven and 10 is Phoenix.
Okay. So Lynn Haven, again, it's a similar situation. This is one of the larger stores, heavy sales. We've had, you can't see it very well with this site plan, but you again, these would be placed around the back of the store, pushed up as close to the store as the fire marshal will allow us, and we'll have to work with the fire marshal on that, outside of any travel lanes. This is part of a larger shopping center. Again, you can't see it very well, but you've got an adjoining shopping center next to us. So this is not a situation where, there you go. It looks like a parking lot in this, but that's actually, where's my clicker? Is this a clicker? I mean, a little thing.
Pointer.
Yeah, this over here, pointer. This area over here is actually more inline shopping down to that shopping center. So there's a little passageway, but from the parking field out here, there's just really no visibility. He's proposing to park some of them along here and then some of them along there. And again, the back of the store has a pretty well-defined stormwater management facility, and then there's also a very defined hedge that runs along the back there. The conditions here, again, we've not received any, the adjacent property notices have been sent out, the store has been posted. I'm not aware of any of the adjacent property owners, nearby property owners who have any concerns. These would be and Marty, what is the square footage of this store? 200,000. This is one of the large stores like the Red Mill, 200,000 square foot store. And again, a very successful store where there's a lot of demand for some of the layaway and some of the other merchandise at the holidays. And we would also, we have a series of conditions that are acceptable to the applicant here. No hazardous, limitation on the number, limitation on the time of year that they would be out there, that the final location of them would have to be subject to final approval by zoning and fire marshal. et cetera. But they're back there near the loading area. They're not visible from public rights-of-way. And you can see that mature hedge across there that's providing excessive buffering with the residential behind, which is some multifamily.
And how many at that store?
That would be no more than 20. The next one, number 10, is Phoenix Drive. And this is a store, this is the store that's near the Lynn Haven Mall. You may recall we came before the Planning Commission, City Council a few years ago for an expansion, actually, for this store so that we could add the full grocery component. This store, they're proposing to put them back in this area and have a limitation number of no more than 10 over there. And that's where they've historically put them. This store, Tanya, what is our square footage? 168,000 square feet. It was originally a Division I store, and it was expanded a few years ago to make it a little bit so it had the full-service grocery component to it. This, again, is an area of the site that has very limited visibility. As you can see, very mature hedge along this side. It's way off to the side as you drive into the site. All the vehicular access, for the most part, is from the front or from the other side. Big parking field because this site is overparked. I heard your comment earlier about the parking. I think this was parked at a 4.5 per thousand ratio, and the city requirement is 4 per thousand. So you've got a lot of parking. But we're trying to keep them back there, minimize the visibility. There also is a condition that's a little bit unique from the others, that if this site over here were ever to be developed, and for whatever reason that hedge were to be removed or thinned out, that we would have to put a wooden fence or some type of barrier fence along there if we were going to continue to have the containers in that location. But again, that's a condition that we worked out with the staff. I can't fathom how they would really have any visibility. Again, one of the entrance features is over here, and then entrance over here, there would be very, very minimal. You'd really have to drive over there. Again, there's a lot of parking that's not used at this site as it is, but that's where they would be located. And I think, and again, so the conditions on that are acceptable. So I think those are the three that you've looked at before. The new site is the one at Hilltop, and that is agenda item, just to keep the record straight.
8.
Agenda item 8. And this is an exciting store, I have to say, because we worked on this. I live near this store. It took us a long time working on all the documents to get this together. I think for those of you who aren't familiar with this shopping center, who may not be familiar, that was a Kmart. That was a very dated Kmart that ultimately went out of business, and that center was in need of significant work. Walmart came in a few years ago. We went before the city council for a conditional use permit associated with some of the accessory components that we have over here. But as part of that approval, we also showed architectural detail. We worked very closely with the staff on dressing this up, because basically what we did was we took that old Kmart store, respected the old walls for the most part, and gutted it, and did a few additions on the sides. And you really, if you've been out there, you really have to look to not know that it's a completely brand new store. You would never know that it was essentially, we had retrofitted the older building that's there. This site has a shopping center that's, I wouldn't say not shopping center, but there's other retail parcels that kind of surround it that are owned by a different property owner, Pratt Street Retail, and those gentlemen are here, and they're going to speak with us. And this one, what she's asking for, the square footage of this one, Jackie? 152. And so again, that's approximately the size of the Kmart that we took over, with a little bit of a few tweaks to accommodate some things around the area, around the sides. If you could go back to the site plan, the aerial a second, please. That was up there. Okay. So on this side, there are reciprocal easements for, reciprocal parking and travel lanes, et cetera, with this overall shopping center, because obviously you can, even though what you're seeing here is the confines of the actually subdivided parcel, you can obviously access this site off First Colonial. You can access it off Donna Drive as well. Over this area here is the loading area, the loading component. Again, we tried to identify, and on this side is our garden center, and this is the Auto Bell. And then, of course, the store faces this way, and then past Donna Drive, you have Laskin Road up here. What we've done over here is she has a limited need, again, for some containers. She's anticipating 7 to 10, so we're asking for 10. So a limit on 10. Again, the same limitations that we had before. The staff did indicate that because we are adjacent to this retail that's owned separately from Walmart, that we could perhaps put some fencing. There's a screen fence that screens some of the loading area that's of a wooden nature over here. They asked if we could put something similar to that or compatible with that that would be temporary. If you could go to the site plan there, kind of along like that. Actually, it was the previous one. Like that. I think the staff reports showed it going all the way down here, and our comment was that's an awful lot of temporary wooden fencing when you're needing to get into the containers over here, and when you're basically screening yourself from your own store over here because the center, the remainder of the center is over there. The other issue is, some questions we had is, well, wait a minute, what does this box mean? There's already a site plan that shows some parking spines, et cetera. She would just put some of these containers in those existing parking spines. So we're not proposing to block any travel lanes or drive aisles. It's more just to get them closer to the store. This area back here is the loading area. There's a lot, it has some reinforced concrete. There's a lot of truck activity with the deliveries that are coming back there each day. So I know one question is, could you push them back a little bit further? That's why we have them kind of in these areas over here on our site, located, to typically probably put them in some of the perpendicular to one another within the spines, but not, not interfering with the routine truck travel lanes that are coming into the site or anything that would pose an issue from a fire perspective. I did speak with Mr. Aspinwall, who owns the self-storage on the other side here. He does not have any objection to it. And I know the gentleman from Pratt Street did want to comment on it. They're new owners of the remaining shopping center, and they did contact us last Friday, just to indicate that they had some questions, and I believe that they would also like to speak. So on that part, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if not, defer to the gentleman from the Pratt Street.
So you're talking 20, 20, 10, and 10?
Yes, sir.
On number count?
Yes, sir.
Everybody's got that? 2 at 20 and 2 at 10?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Don?
These are all 20-foot containers, right? They're not 40 or 40?
They're 40.
All 40s?
Yes, sir. But they would all, sir, on all of these, we have defined limits that we'd have to keep them in. So there's precise locations. We'd have to keep them within those confines.
Any other questions from Mr. Klein? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We do have one speaker in opposition for item number 8. Jeff Spatz, would you please come to the podium and state your name for the record?
Good afternoon, Council. Jeff Spatz on behalf of Pratt Street Capital, PSC Hilltop, and the other co-owners of the adjacent center there. As Mr. Klein explained, we own, and I'll try to explain a little bit better, we own over a retail strip center, retail establishments over here, as well as on this side of the Walmart center. On each side, we have properties, retailers that are on each side. There is a reciprocal easement agreement between Walmart and our ownership, which was placed there by the prior owner prior to the sale to Walmart, to allow both parties to have utilization of access, ingress, egress, et cetera, so that there would be a kind of cohesive flow to the center, even though it is separate parcels. We only did learn about this more recently. There's many factors that are, moving parts here. One is this Walmart is a relatively new Walmart. As Walmart explained, they've been open, I'm not sure if it's even been a year yet. If it has been, it's maybe just over a year, but it's a pretty new Walmart, and we are still just digesting how the impact is on the center. They've been a great neighbor. We're happy to work with them, but we want to make sure that the traffic flow, the truck loading, and the parking do not get adversely impacted. And we did get to this a little bit late in the game. I wanted to thank the council and the staff, especially Mr. Davis. I'm not even sure if he's here. Okay, he has been very responsive and very helpful, and I wanted to thank the council for that. It has made our job of digesting this in a short period of time, much easier, so thank you. And that being said, we want to, as neighbors, we want to be good neighbors, we want to accommodate Walmart, we want to help them be successful, retailers in the market. We just want to ensure that it does not adversely impact the aesthetics as the council is concerned, and as far as traffic flow and truck loading as well. The site plan that they put together had I could call it a substantial area, as an area where they may or may not put the trailers. We would like to a little more closely define it to understand, because my understanding from being at the center and from speaking to Walmart is the trucks actually do come along the back of our retail establishment and go through here. So we want to make sure that that does not impede it, and Walmart has verbally said, no, we would make sure that it doesn't impact the truck, ingress, egress, and loading area. So we're not in opposition, we just want to make sure that it is working cohesive manner with the entire shopping center, and we could all work together. So as much as we are quoted as opposition, we're not here formally saying that we're against it. We just want it to be done in a way that enhances the entire center for Walmart as much as, our retailers.
We have a time limit on speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
My first time here.
No, that's fine. Questions of Mr. Spatz from the council or the planning commission? You've promoted all of it.
Sorry, I apologize.
We're commissioners, not a problem.
I
Yeah.
apologize.
Was the fencing a priority for you, the screening?
The fencing would be helpful, but part of that is to understand exactly the layout of the storage facilities.
Okay.
And then we could see the visibility and the the eyesight, because if you go back one slide, I'm sorry, or one more. When you see, there. So to understand, there's a lot of parking here. To understand exactly where in this area it will, be set, then we can understand exactly the sight line. So we really want to keep it looking nice aesthetically as we can. And we did ask if it could be set back a little bit further, to kind of keep it out of the viewpoint. As they said, as Mr. Klein explained, it's a little difficult because of the loading area. So we're trying to have the discussion of how we could work together to accommodate it from our perspective. Obviously, the commission has to approve it from their perspective, but we're trying to work together to see if there is a way we can accommodate.
So my concern is, a lot of times with those screenings, they end up looking worse than better. And it could end up looking like, if we've all seen the construction site fences that go up, and I just don't want the screening to make it look more of an eyesore than it would if you just had the walls of the containers, so.
I agree completely, and that's part of the factor of, is the screening going to be up year-round, or is it only going to be there when the storage facilities are there? Is it going to be maintained? Will it need to be power washed, or et cetera? Those are kind of some of the moving parts that we're, trying to have the discussion on, to make sure that it works.
My understanding is that screening would have to be removed when the containers are moved. If
That was my understanding, and I wanted to confirm that. And the question is, will, from one year to the next, how will it be maintained? And, at this point, if the commission deems it that it is a appropriate use, because this is a new Walmart, and we're still just trying to get our hands around exactly the logistics and the layout and the trucking lanes, we would propose that it would be a more timeline, finite period, rather than an indefinite approval.
I think we're all in agreement on that.
That's fine. But I just, especially with this site, because Walmart's only been open for a year, and there's a lot of open issues from our perspective.
All right, thank you.
Anybody, Jack?
So currently, the traffic flow and the pattern is acceptable. Is that?
That is correct. Yes,
For the
we have
truck,
not had
that
any
is-
issues
not
with traffic.
The
and
truck pattern.
We have not had any issues with their trucks
Okay.
going behind our center and, behind our parcel and using that loading area. We have not had any issues.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I actually have a question
Jan.
for Walmart. I have actually a question for Walmart.
Well,
So-
let's finish.
Okay.
Do you need to ask this
No.
while this gentleman's here?
No.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Tom, she has a question for you.
So my question is this: if the loading trucks are entering behind where those storage units are proposed, could we move those storage units closer to the building?
We are, could you go back to the site plan? Thank you for that question, by the way. And I'm going to have the store manager address where the trucks, for the most part, are coming through. I will say that the short answer is Walmart's never going to allow something that interferes with their ability to get the merchandise into the store and interfere with their truck routes. So not containers, but this is Jackie Russell, who's the store manager of the new store at Hilltop.
So good afternoon. So where the trucks come in, they actually come off of Donna Drive, and they do go behind Winter. So they go here, and they come down through here, and this right here is where they back the trucks up. These trucks are really big. So in the morning time, I may have possibly anywhere from, I want to say 5 to 10 deliveries, different size of vehicles coming from local business partners for grocery merchandise. And then I also have our Walmart corporate trucks, and they have to back these things up into 4 different bays. So they need this room right here to back up and maneuver, because they're maneuvering around 5 to 10 other vehicles. So I can't put the proposed bulk storage there, because then there's just no way. It's going to create an interference. It's going to create a safety issue.
And I wasn't really talking about back there in the corner. I was talking more like closer to the building, because it looks like you've got them, it looks like you've got them up in that front corner, but instead of being in the corner, move them closer to the building.
So, good question. I actually have a pickup area. So my online grocery shoppers go to the back of the building, and we have a door on the side of the building that allows my associates to come out there and provide that service to that customer. So unfortunately, I cannot put it there because that's going to impede on those parking spaces for those customers to come in and come out.
Okay.
But the reason, if you go to the exhibit showing where they would be with the black, that one, yeah. What we were doing there was really just respecting the property line and showing that that would be within the limits of where they could be. We're not saying that they would necessarily be pushed up all the way along that area. We would, we're going to try to keep them in existing parking areas in a way that does not interfere with the pickup. You also have the pharmacy pickup.
Yes, there's a pharmacy
drive-through, and there's designated spots for people that are doing the online pickup that you're talking about. But if you can go to the one that shows the site plan, a minute. Well, yeah, the other one, the one that shows the overhead, I'm sorry. Yeah, so where she would do them is, as a practical matter, there's some parking spines that run through here, and she would have them within those parking, for the most part, in those parking spine area, correct?
Do you anticipate 10 units side by side? Or would
So
you?
they would be like 2, and then there would be some footage
Space.
yes, and then 2. So I'm trying to confine it into allocated parking spaces on my property.
So kind of, really, they would be more, as a practical matter, more in this zone right in here. And then with respect to the fencing, the wooden fencing, if we wanted to modify that condition that said, or such appropriate screening is approved by the planning director or something like that to provide some flexibility, I think that is, yes, and someone had asked the question, is it going to be up year round? No, I mean, we wouldn't have just a line of fencing there with nothing behind it or whatever. It would be removed. The wooden fencing, sometimes it draws attention, I agree. I see a wooden fencing and you're like, okay, what's going on behind that? But there is some shade cloth screening, this portable temporary screening that I've seen used in some locations and some of our stores. We've sometimes put it on the inside of garden centers that can come on portable racks that they can roll out there. So if you wanted to modify that condition that says, or such appropriate screening is approved by the planning director, that we can work, with the planning director to find some alternative as well, instead of the wood. But if the requirement is that wood, then yes, they would have to go to a fence vendor, and they would have to have it basically prefab sections put up, and they'd have to have the concrete, portable concrete footers put out there, and then they'd have to have all that removed. And then her employees would have to be maneuvering around that, particularly if it ran all the way down as was originally proposed, to get back to where those areas are located. And again, if you go back to the site plan, it's the overhead, I'm sorry. Here's your visibility. I mean, this is the end of the shopping center that Mr. Spatz's company owns right there. So we're talking about this area down here. And so we certainly could work with the staff, planning director on appropriate screening kind of at that corner that we discussed. I would also say that as soon as Mr. Spatz and his company reached out to us, we put them in touch with the whole Walmart team. I think he met with the market manager, he's met with the store manager, and he's also scheduled to be talking to someone from the corporate office that handles all the real estate transactions and all that to establish a relationship and understand. And of course, he understands, and I won't put words in his mouth, that this is a recommendation, that this matter still has to go before city council, so I imagine we will continue having discussions with him. At the time Walmart bought the site, it was all owned by one owner, so we purchased the site from one owner, and then the residual was still owned by the owner that we purchased it with. So the ECR and everything that he was referencing were put in place as part of that transaction.
No more questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Stand by, you may be back.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers in opposition?
Nope, that was it.
So we have Mr. Klein speaking in favor, one speaker opposed, and with that, we can close the public hearing and discuss this amongst ourselves. So who wants to take off with it? Dave?
Well, as you know, I have a number of concerns. I think foremost in my mind is that these have to be time limited. Second, I'm most concerned about the one at Hilltop because it hasn't been there before. And the current owner of the adjacent shopping center hasn't experienced it either. And so I think certainly in that instance, we've got to be very careful because if the two don't play well together, then he's not going to be able to do anything about it. And I wouldn't want an adjacent property owner to be disadvantaged in any way, for his operations to be disadvantaged anyway, and have no recourse about it because there's a conditional use permit in place. So particularly in that site, I think we have to look at that. Further, it cannot be the answer to the internet is coming, to retail is changing, that everybody just throws up a bunch of 40-foot trailers everywhere. There's got to be some better answer than that long-term, or we'll have 10,000 40-foot trailers in the city. I think, what they're facing, by the way, they're one of the largest drivers of the shift to online shopping. But what they're facing, everybody in retail is facing, and everybody's going to have to grapple with it, and all sorts of other different aspects of the economy, but we'll leave that aside for now. So, as a long-term solution, I cannot imagine, and I certainly hope that the answer isn't, well, we just string a bunch of 40-foot trailers around our store, no matter who it is, whether it's Walmart or Target or anybody else. That's just not, there's going to have to be a better, more professional, more creative solution. Typically, if you have growing sales, and you got to be sticking trailers outside of your store, it means you need more stores, you need to expand the store that you have. That's more expensive than trailers. That's this whole argument. That's all what this is about. So, but I don't know that that's going to be very good for the city. I certainly don't think we ought to encourage it, and we certainly ought not do it without some sort of time limit so we can review it. I don't necessarily know that any consideration's been given to how to manage that in a way like we discussed 2 years ago, and I think we realize that really has to occur because I just don't. I hope that's not going to be in anybody's head a permanent solution to changes in the marketplace. I think we ought to expect better than that, very frankly. So I would be, I don't know about 2 years in Hilltop. I don't think any more than 1 year. And the reason I say that is because if it impacts this adjacent shopping center, they ought not have to wait 2 years to try and fix it. That just wouldn't be fair to an adjacent property owner. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Karen and then Ron.
So given David's last comment, I think it might be appropriate for us to, yes, of course, be determining, sufficient, appropriate use of space, how much and how long, for each application individually, of course, because each one is different and has its own unique constraints and needs. I think that, while it's problematic, what might be causing the issue is a conundrum for all of us. We can't determine for them how to solve it. All we can determine is how we're going to manage it on their sites for now. As well, I understand the fear of other businesses doing it, but they would be able to come forward to us to make that request, and then we would have to determine whether or not the very same things we're determining on this, whether it's appropriate use of space, how much, how long, or whether or not they have the space to do it. For instance, Big Lots are usually in a retail space. They're not standalone, and they don't have the kind of space that's behind the Walmart on Nimmo, for instance. And of course, the First Colonial has a different type of space and a different amount of space, and so we have to handle that one differently. And they're asking for fewer units. So, in my view, I can understand a time constraint being applied, and I can understand a limitation on the number of storage units. But I think as we're doing it, it's going to have to be according to each of them individually, and I don't think it should be with the fear that we're going to set a precedent for every retail business putting storage units on their lots, because many of them don't have lots to do that, and when they come forward, we'd have to assess them accordingly. So that's not a fear of mine. It's whether or not this is appropriate to the use of the Nimmo in Princess Anne, or the use of the Walmart use of the Walmart on Nimmo in Princess Anne, or use of the Walmart space in First Colonial or Lynn Haven or anywhere else. It's not our job to figure out how they solve that problem. It's how we solve this one.
Anybody on this side, Jeff?
I agree with both speakers. I would be willing to support this with the time limitation. I agree with you on doing the Lynn Haven one at a smaller duration of time to see how it performs. We're trying to, everybody's trying to think of a solution for this, and, we don't have the answers for that, but if my math is right, these containers are about 8 feet wide by 40 feet long, which is like 320 square feet. 10 of those would give you 3,200 square feet of additional retail space. You're talking these facilities that are 150,000 square feet. There are a lot of very good contractors in this area that could easily add 3,200 square feet of additional space onto the back of one of these large buildings, probably for a pretty inexpensive price. So there are solutions to this, but I'd be willing to support it with some time limitations.
Ron?
I too would do that. We see other types of uses needing trailers. Churches need them temporarily. Schools need them temporarily. And here we have a situation where the retailer needs it temporarily. We want to accommodate him, but we need a longer-term solution than that. And I think that 2 years would be appropriate, and so I would be in favor of that.
Jack and then Don.
Well, I think that it's, these are in commercial areas. I think that the location of the trailers, as they are and have been, is, they're fairly hidden, they're not visible. So, as it is, I think it's okay, but I do support, and I feel it's appropriate for a time limit as well.
Don?
I'm like Jeff, I've done some little math, and I come up with, the time we get 60 containers, we built a 20,000 square foot warehouse, here, and when you put all 60 of them together. And but I've always been a pro-business, and I want people to be successful, but I also try to look out for the city's best interest too, and and I come out, every once in a while I come out with harebrained ideas, but I could see people come up and just put up a small storefront and put a couple containers in the back and start running a business. Why wouldn't they be able to do that? So Walmart's doing it, so we don't want that, anything like that to start happening. I mean, we think more of a city than that, but I do want Walmart to be successful. They need to stay in our area. I appreciate what they do for our community. But I think they have to. I think they do appreciate what we try to make our city look like, and so I would support it for the 2-year time frame like we did 2 years ago.
Okay, Mr. Weiner.
I'm definitely in support too. Even 2 years, I'm good for 2 years, even with Hilltop. But when y'all leave here today, don't think that we don't like you, all right? Because we do. We want you to come back or do good work here in Virginia Beach. So yes, I'm in support of it.
I'd like to say one. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I'm not on Hilltop. I'm much more comfortable with the notion of a one-year administrative review on Hilltop. Those are much tighter quarters than all these other sites. And it hasn't been done before. And if there are conflicts between the operations of those two things, I think that adjacent operator ought to have some say in the matter. I don't think it would be a lot to ask, nor do I think it would be fair if we didn't do that in this.
You said exactly what I was going to say.
Well, let-
One-year administrative.
We're going to hear these individually, so when we make a motion for each, someone make a motion on Hilltop accordingly. We got to make 4 motions,
Gotcha.
but we're not finished. Did anybody else down here want to speak?
I was going to say the exact same thing. I have absolutely no issues with, 7, 9, and 10. You can't even tell that the containers are there. I mean, I knew 2 years ago that we did it, and on a couple of them I went by, and it was like, oh yeah, oh there they are, so you have to go looking for them. But I agree, the one at Hilltop, it's almost out it's not even really behind the building. I mean, you'll be able to see it from the front row parking. I mean, so that one I do have some reservation with.
Karen?
I just had one more, just kind of concern about the way we look at this going forward, because I'm not sure I want us to be considering adding another 3,200 or whatever, however many square feet it would be of building in any area where that space might be available, when the option is for a 4-month span of storage units that aren't visible to the eye from the street. So I don't know that I would like that to be the option that's considered going forward. I frankly, in my personal opinion, I'd rather timeframes that are administratively reviewed for something that impacts us only for 4 months, and most of us don't see, except for when we have a timeframe on a brand-new building. That's my thought process. So I'm not a fan of urging them to consider adding more building space. That I don't think is very wise across the city. I do think that each item that comes before us, as I said before, will be assessed individually by us to determine whether or not a business wants to put storage units. They're not just going to get their business and put up storage units. They're going to have to ask to do that. So it won't set a precedent, what we're doing today. We will have to assess each one individually. So the idea of precedent setting doesn't fly with me either, and I don't think we want more building. I think allowing for some temporary space that allows them to continue to do good business on some of these places where it's not obtrusive is of value to all of us. So I think we should be doing that. I agree. I think it's good business.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve applications 7, 9, and 10 with a 1-year, 2-year limit.
Ms. Wilson, can we do
Don't
that
have to be
one at a
individual.
time?
We need to do one at a time, please.
So before you make a motion, may I have a word?
Certainly.
Okay, I just want to end up the discussion today with a few thoughts, and then I'll entertain a motion. In the big picture, we've got the largest retailer in the United States, maybe the world, asking to put 60 trailers in a city of 400,000 people. So I don't think we're going to upset the apple cart and ruin anybody's neighborhood or ruin any retailers. Another thought was no retailers have asked for this. Well, Target doesn't sell lawnmowers, and Target doesn't sell bicycles, and Target doesn't sell foosball tables, whatever. So I don't think we need to charge Walmart with what other retailers do or don't do. The sad thing is Sears, Kmart, Penny's, these people are all out of business. And so we need to do, and as somebody said it on this side of the room, we need to do what we can do to help Walmart stay in business, and we also need to, take care of the aesthetics of the city of Virginia Beach. I'm in total agreement with what Karen says and what Jan. These things can't be seen almost by anybody except for Hilltop. So it's not like we're letting some intrusive thing into neighborhoods. And the truth is, if we put a time limit on it, we have a chance to come back and look at this. I'd almost rather, I don't know whether we can do it or not, let this be an administrative review so that they don't have to come back into the public arena. What do you think about that?
I was going to ask you what you were asking for. But
That's what I-
administrative review on an annual basis or two-year basis is certainly typical or not uncommon. I'll make sure I'm saying the right thing here. Okay, I'm saying the right thing. All right,
I would
good.
prefer that, I mean, you all are a competent staff of people, and if they're violating the intent of what they've agreed to, you'll know that. Now, my colleagues on this panel may not agree with me, and they may want to force them back to the table, the public arena, but I would be comfortable with administrative review from the staff. And if this thing goes awry, it goes awry. I don't think, my guess is in 3 or 4 years when this has a chance to meet itself out, they may end up not even needing this space because of the way the retail world is shaking out. So, you know, I'm in complete support of this application. If we want to put an administrative review on it, then we can have a motion. Yes, sir.
Point of information, please explain an administrative review to me. I don't know exactly
Administrative
how that
review.
works.
You means you don't ever see it again.
What, I needed a little more details.
All right, a little more detail. All right, so if it's once go ahead. Let the guy that's going to do it.
What that would entail is, in our system, an inspection would be triggered every year. An inspector would go out, make sure that they meet the conditions. If there's only certain months they're supposed to be there, that gets checked. And we would also see if there are any complaints from adjacent, if there's been any property, or any issues in that past year. And typically, if they have met all the conditions and it has gone on without any issues, it would be administratively approved for another year.
Let me add that last year. Okay, go ahead.
I need to respond to that.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
that means we would never have another chance to consider this if they comply with this application, with the conditions.
That's correct, unless you put another time limit, for example, 5 years with an administrative review every year. That would be the only way it would come back.
Permanently have the number of trailers requested indefinitely, as long as they comply with.
Correct, except if there were problems with the site and we revoke that administrative approval, then they would have to come back to you with another request for the bulk storage.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody understands.
David?
Play it out.
I have a question, a comment on that. So Barry, this morning you indicated to us that in a briefing with City Council, one of the things that they had mentioned was they wanted to see a time limit, correct?
You're correct, but they didn't have
They didn't-
any particular consensus or detail.
About-
I just wanted to let
about
you
how
know
that happens.
Right.
Okay.
Now, but let me tell you that it has come up in our favorite short-term rentals that.
I'd always come back to that, don't you?
That if, and I'll have to ask Kay if this is, we didn't determine if it's legal, but they asked that when the administrative review is done, that the council is advised of the administrative review. So there is some possibility here you could have a little more oversight than never see it again. Is that right?
Yes.
Good.
You could ask that they let you know what the determination was. Also, if you have one that is a problem, that people complained about, staff can bring them back to you and say, we can't administratively do this, it's yours.
So, David?
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with the administrative review. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's really much of a review, unless someone says, you backed into my car, or, they're having wild parties back, or whatever it is. I mean, I don't think a 2-year, I don't think coming back for a conditional use permit in 2 years is a great burden for anybody. And the 2-year administrative review, doesn't sound like much of a review at all. It sounds like unless something goes wrong, then it's going to get renewed. And I just don't think that's good enough, very frankly. So, and I still am concerned about that Hilltop site. So.
Well, unless something does go wrong, why should they have to come back here?
I can answer that.
Okay.
We're here because times are changing with regard to retail and how it's all done and whatever. Times are going to keep changing. And do we want to have anything to say about something that have spent an hour and some time talking about aesthetics, something that's an aesthetical concern that may not be necessary after 2 years or 4 years or whatever, as we review it going down the road. Because of the administrative review, we have nothing further to say about it as long as they comply with the conditions. And
Well, back to Barry, I mean, when Mike says we have nothing to do about it, if you, in your review process, find a problem, it sounds like Kay said you can bring it back to us.
I just said, and there are no problems with
Okay.
what, then we do not have any right to have anything further to say about it.
And that's what led to my question, if there are no problems, why do we care? But we must, or you think we must. Anyway, enough.
Chairman,
Ron?
I'm the same way. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen an administrative review come back here that I can remember, that we had placed that in there, and there was a violation of such that it came back. And I go back 2 years ago when, in good faith, there was representation that there was going to be an attempt to solve this problem, and it really hasn't. And I think you might be right. I think in a couple of years, it may solve itself. I mean, the market may just, be so much more online and less in-store that it solves some of its problems itself. So I think 2 years is not unreasonable for everybody to put their heads together and try to find a solution that's better than trailers. And I think, again, if I own that tailor shop, as Dave mentioned, and what's to prevent me to come here and want to have a trailer? Everybody could have a trailer. It'd be really nice.
We've got to come back to us.
I think you are
Got to
setting a
come back
precedent.
to us with it.
I know that, but what do you say to them? Well, you gave Walmart 20 trailers, why
No,
can't I
you
have one?
determine size, need, whether or not they have the space, whether or not it's
Well,
intrusive
I'm
to
gonna-
the eye, all of those things would have to be part of the evaluation.
I don't have enough space. I need more retail space.
I
and
think you'd
let me
have
put
to
it in.
evaluate each of them individually. I don't think you just blanket check all of them because you did Walmart. I disagree.
Well,
I
I
think giving them
postponed a
time.
motion, and now I'm ready for a motion. And I think Mike was making.
I'll make a motion as to agenda item number 7, that it be approved with a 2-year time limit for
Second.
review.
All right, we have a motion and a second on 7, ready for the vote.
Motion.
Mr. Wall? By a recorded vote of 10-0, item number 7, Walmart Real Estate Business Trust has been approved with conditions as amended.
David?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the commission approve agenda item number 8 for a conditional use permit with a 1-year limitation. This is the Hilltop
Second.
site.
And a second by Jan Rosinski. Jeff?
I was just going to say, would you be open to a 2-year with a 1-year administrative on that one, so that they could still do a 2-year, but they could review it after 1 year, in lieu of the fact that it is new, it is visible, and we did have speakers against it. So I'm with you on the 1 year.
For it, or against it.
They're not opposed to it. But they did show concern about it. And like, it is a new store, and it is visible, where the other 3, you can't even see it. So I don't want to change your motion, but I didn't know if you would consider a 2-year with a 1-year administrative review on that one, so they could all come back at the same time, if they do come back.
No, I am
Okay.
not. 1 year.
Jack, well, we have a motion and we have a second. So we need to, is that right? You seconded this.
Can I do a substitute motion? I'd like to put a condition, add a condition, keep the 2-year, because is that what we're at? We're at the
1 year.
1 year.
One
We're
year. 1 year.
on number 8, the motion's been made to limit it, to have a 1-year,
You can do a 6.
as opposed to a 2 on number 7. And Jeff's argument was make it 2, but have a 1-year administrative, so that 4 of these are going to come back together, and there's no need to send 1 back a year from now and 3 back 2 years from now. I think that's what you're thinking.
But I still want to have some controls on this new site.
Some control on
after
the new
first
site.
year, That if it is going awry, that we have a voice.
Well, I'm getting smoke signals from the adjacent property owner out there that he's more comfortable with 1 year, so I'm sticking to 1 year.
Can you at least have him answer that?
Yeah, let's have a verbal rather than a smoke signal.
Please.
Sure.
As I previously said, 1 year, there's a lot of merits to the 1 year because this is the Walmart's been open less than a year. I'm not familiar with how the administrative process would work, so I really trying to understand that, and also trying to understand exactly the layout and where the truck lanes will be. So that's part of the unknowns, and that's on me for not finding out about this earlier and having as much time for the due diligence as I could have. That being said, we open to the 2 year with a 1 year administrative review. If I could understand that the administrative review is subject to adjacent property holding not having any issues with it, if that would be a condition.
I think you hit it about on the head. It comes down to this. Are you more comfortable with 1 year conditional use permit for those storage units? Are you comfortable enough with the idea that they have it for 2 years? After 1 year, the staff would review it. And I would encourage the staff to be very sensitive to adjacent property owners in that. It also would be incumbent upon you to make sure that you're communicating with them if you have some sort of concerns or objections. If you are comfortable with that 2 years, with the administrative review, I'm perfectly comfortable with that myself.
If we could put in there a condition to understand that there should be certain compliance with the adjacent property holding to ensure that it is done in a way that's not obtrusive and invasive to the neighbors.
Okay. I'm reading to you to say that you're okay with 2 years. and
Yes,
all right.
that's,
So, Mr. Chairman, may I change my motion, please?
You may.
I would like to make a motion that we approve agenda item number 8 with a 2-year limitation and an administrative review after 1 year.
Do I have a second?
I will re-second that.
And Jan seconded that, so vote is open.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There was discussion about the alternative fencing, some alternative fencing that would be, screening that would be acceptable for the planning director. I didn't know, as part of this motion, if you wanted to consider that or not. Right now, there's a requirement that there be wooden fencing. We've heard different comments about that, and one suggestion was, or such alternative screening is acceptable to the planning director.
What is the staff?
I'm certain, I'm
Staff
perfectly
position, would you rather it be alternative or leave it fixed or let you all work with the applicant? I think Jeff had some concerns about the fence because it could be worse, the cure could be worse than the problem.
Exactly, so it depends on what type of screening.
Right.
you consider. And also where you would like that screening.
Well, right this minute, we're not real sure where the containers are going to go exactly, so I'm not sure all we can do is require screening subject to, can we do that? Is that too wide open?
And I'm okay with that, because I don't like the wood fence either.
Okay. So then the condition would be, the screening would be a requirement subject to your
Right.
input. It's not very
Approval.
formal, but
No, we have
We
the
do
word.
that all the time.
you got the words for that?
We do
They
that all the time.
determine whether or not they're having it or not?
No, there will be screening. They're
The
just
type
determining
and
whether they-
location subject to the planning directors. Okay, all right.
So do we need to change the motion?
I'm happy to restate.
He just did.
Dave, third
Okay,
time.
good.
Okay, ready for vote?
Already did.
Okay. By a vote of 10-0, item number 8, Walmart Real Estate Business Trust has been approved with conditions as amended.
Thank you. Need a motion for number 9.
We'll shake it up a little bit. I'll make a motion for item number 9 to be approved with a 2-year limit.
Second.
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 Karen seconded. Vote is open.
Mr. Inman?
Mr. Inman?
By a recorded vote of 10-0, item number 9, Walmart Real Estate Business Trust has been approved with conditions as amended.
Okay, and last, number 10. Who will, motion on number 10?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 10, with the 2-year time limit.
Second.
Second by Mr. Redmond. Vote is open.
By recorded vote of 10-0, item number 10, Walmart Real Estate Business Trust has been approved with conditions as amended.
Thank you. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
your great work in the city, and we wish you well, and
We like you.
figure out a way to not have as many containers in 2 years.
Yeah, I do.
That's right.
This is
I
for-
call item number 12.
All right, the next item on the agenda is item number 12, Christopher Stankus, an application for a conditional use permit, commercial kennel on property located at 3612 West Neck Road.
Oh,
If there is an
no,
applicant
no big
present,
deal.
would you please come to the podium and state your name for the record?
We just need to say.
Okay.
My name is Christopher Stankus. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hearing me today. I don't know how to proceed. I've never done this before. Though, this morning, there was some opposition to my conditional use permit, and there has been some amendments to that people who opposed have agreed upon with me. And as I understand right now, there is no opposition to my conditional use permit.
Are the conditions that have been submitted, have you, well, let me ask, have you and the opposition have rearranged your conditions? Are they acceptable to you?
Yes, sir.
And they've been presented to the staff? Is that, they have,
Yes, sir.
say again?
Are these the 9?
Are these are the 9 items that are listed on what was given to us earlier today?
Yes, sir.
And those are, just as we see them, they're acceptable conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then I would, unless, does anybody have,
Carolyn's trying to.
I'm
get you
sorry.
I need to see the conditions before you all vote on them. They have to be legal conditions. They have to be enforceable.
I'm not certain which 9 conditions.
Well, see, we don't even know which 9 conditions.
We have a list. Who's got a copy they can give to? Yeah, pass that over to Kay.
We're using these. Oh, see, that's different.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
Okay.
Oh, then I don't have any idea what the conditions are.
yeah, then we're,
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I think if staff would read the conditions, and you could see how they would have been adjusted. I think they have adjusted the 9 that were here.
Hi,
We wrote a
I have them.
list.
I have them. So the conditions, most of the conditions that we have 1 through 5 will remain, but number 1, we're going to change from 12 adult dogs to just 12 dogs instead of saying adult dogs. And then we
Read the whole condition, Marshall, for me.
Sure.
I'm
Want me to read
sorry.
all of them?
Yes, would you
Okay.
read all of them for me?
Starting with number 1, no more than 12 dogs shall be kept on the property at any time. Number 2, the existing kennel structure, outdoor area, and fence shall be maintained in a safe and sanitary condition. Number 3, all animal waste shall be collected and disposed of in a lawful manner on a daily basis. Number 4, the applicant shall ensure that the dogs are properly vaccinated and humanized and are licensed to the City of Virginia Beach. Number 5, all signage on the site must be in accordance with sign regulations of the zoning ordinance. In the hallway, we came up with 4 more. Number 6, all dogs shall be kenneled indoors between the hours of 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. Number 7, no other one-day service shall be offered or carried out on the property except for the dogs in training.
To me, that would mean you could groom the dogs or bathe the dogs at your training, but no other dogs could come in for that service.
So no other service shall be provided on
in-
site for those, other than for the dogs on training. Number 8, all dogs will be leashed unless inside the designated training area. Number 9, the location of the kennel and outside training area shall be as depicted on the proposed site layout. And number 10, dog shows shall not be permitted.
And what was the last one?
Number
Dog
10,
shows.
dog shows shall not be permitted.
My only qualm about any of those is number 6, that states the dogs have to be kept indoors from the hours of 6 p.m. to whatever it was in the morning. Can we do except for, well, we won't put potty breaks, except for urination and defecation.
I
Potty
agree
breaks
to
is
that.
better.
That's probably better.
That was exactly my concern.
That's my concern. I don't want the
breaks.
dog
That's a long time.
inside.
I know, I liked potty break though, okay?
Well, I guess we could use potty
Potty
break.
break. That's a long time. My dog would never.
So are you all, staff, are you all comfortable with what you have? If we have a motion to approve that and the applicant is agreeable with that and the attorney has seen that, are we ready? Any questions of the applicant?
I did have two people for opposition. I'm
Okay.
not sure if,
No, fine, that's good. Then we'll, please take your seat. Well, wait, hold on. Any questions of the applicant first, and then we'll let the opposition speak. No questions of the applicant. Thank you, sir. Stand by for rebuttal.
One of the opposition was Fred Stanton. He has left.
Okay, well
After we
then,
wrote the conditions.
that's the best kind you like.
Yes, sir.
And then there's one other opposition.
if
Okay.
Mr. John Chimblow would come to the podium, please.
Certainly. Keep it short.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. John Chimblow. I live across the street from Chris. I do appreciate your time and your dedication to serving the city of Virginia Beach, along with the great staff you have. They helped guide me through some of the questions I had. It's a little tough here to be at times. I feel like I'm on Judge Judy almost. And my big issue was with noise. And I sat and talked outside here with Chris and Mark, the person that's going to run the kennel. And Chris handshaked me and said he will keep the noise to a minimum. They will keep the dogs in the evening. And I just talked to Mark, and he said there wasn't a problem with that. And as far as the other neighbors and their conditions that they had put forward would be fine. And like I said, it was just a matter of a noise issue at night. So that's, I'm in agreement as long as he advised that now, if that makes sense. I mean, I know I'm up here in opposition, but I think we've worked something out outside.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Do you, if you have a reason for rebuttal, please, you have a minute or so. It sounds like he's okay with your application.
Yes, I discussed with him as a neighbor that we would do whatever changes need to be done to the property if there was any noise issues. Of course, we're not totally sure what the situation will be until we begin operation. But I've known John for many years, and I told him, just as being your neighbor, I would do whatever it would take, to make him comfortable with the noise level. And I think that we have satisfied his opposition to the noise.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and anyone wants to make any comments before we ask for a motion? Don?
No, I think the neighbors have gotten everything worked out. Mr. Stanton was very concerned about it, and he approached me about it, and I think they've met in the hall and gone over the conditions again, and I think they've all agreed now, so I think everything should be fine, so I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
Make a motion to approve the application with the revised conditions that have been presented.
Second it.
Second by Karen.
Vote is open. By recorded vote of 10-0, item number 12, Christopher Stankus has been approved with the conditions as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Stankus.
All right. The next item on the agenda is item number 14, Donna C. Denham. It's an application for conditional use permit, family daycare home on property located at 965 Edwin Drive, and this is in the Kempsville District. If you could please state your name for the record.
Donna C. Denham.
Welcome. Give us a quick overview of what you're asking for, and
I'm just trying to get a conditional use permit for a family daycare home.
okay, thank you. Any questions of the speaker, David?
I do. I know this is on Edwin Drive. I'm very familiar with Edwin Drive. I don't know what the opposition would be, but in the past, have you had any problems with traffic?
Well, speeders. but
Well,
that-
I mean, people parking anywhere besides your driveway. Do you let anybody park in the road, or do they park in your driveway when
Well,
they pick up?
sometimes they do, but I think I'm going to make sure that they don't,
Okay,
because I have 4 parking places.
okay.
When my car's not. So that's what I'm trying to work out,
Okay.
to make sure they can park in my driveway.
So have you been doing daycare at this resident currently?
Yes.
Okay, so you just came before us because of your licensing? They told you you needed the conditional use
Yeah, I want to
permit?
be able to add some part-time kids. I'm not looking to have 10 to 12 kids, which I've told my neighbors. I don't want 10 to 12 kids.
How many kids do you have now?
I've got 4, full-time, and I've got a request for part-time. 12 kids would break the bank if I had to hire, someone to help out and pay payroll. So, no, I don't want 10 to 12.
Any questions of the speaker?
Just stand by so we can ask you more questions after the person comes up.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we do have 2 speakers in opposition. Would the first, Jeanette Moyer, come to the podium, please? Can you please state your name for the record?
Janet Moyer.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Yes, Janet Moyer. I'm opposed to her daycare. I'm especially opposed to 12 kids. If you could limit it to 3 or 4 kids, that would be one thing. But her property is only 28 feet from my back of my house. And I'm opposed to all those kids there. The fence that is across the yard belongs to me, and I spent thousands of dollars to put it up. So I'm concerned about that. And then there's toys coming over the fence all the time, and I'm always throwing toys back. So if you could limit the kids, and I've lived there for 45 years, and it's been a quiet, nice neighborhood. So that's my opposition. And I send a letter in.
So you know she's doing daycare there now, though?
Well, she's had a couple kids there that I know of. I don't know that much because my fence is there. But when I got this card and set up to 12 kids, I thought,
Have you experienced any disruption from the 4 that she has there currently?
From the children, no.
Yeah, no, okay.
Except for, all the toys coming over.
I just want to play with you.
No.
Any other questions? David?
Would you be opposed to 4 kids and a couple part-time?
I suppose that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the 12 is because that's the way the ordinance reads. Is that correct?
The 12 has traditionally been what we put on because that is the maximum number that the Department of Social Services regulates for the state.
So we could recommend less than 12.
I'd appreciate that.
We'll ask her about that when she comes back up.
And-
Oh, Don.
What type of fence do you have back there? Is it chain link?
It's a wooden fence.
Wooden fence, how tall? 6 foot?
6 foot, the normal.
6 foot privacy fence?
Yes.
So you can't see through and they can't see through, the little kids, okay.
But it is my fence, and if there's damage done.
You can see it in the photographs in the application. Jack?
This question's actually for city staff. So by right, what is the by right?
By right, a person can have 4 children, care for 4 children, but not to exceed 7 children in the house. For example, if you have 4 children, you can care for 3.
Any other questions for Mrs. Moyers? Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Marie Femmel. Could you please come to the podium?
Good afternoon.
If you could please state your name for the record.
I beg your pardon?
State your name for the record, please.
She asked you to state your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. Marie O. Femmel, Fehmel.
And can you let us know what your concerns are?
Yes, very much so. I live directly, not behind her, but catty corner, and I have lived there for 46 years. And this is a neighborhood of retired elderly people, and very quiet except for the traffic going up and down Edwin, which we have a lot of. And I feel that if there's a daycare needed, there's one right up the street from us, within a mile. I am not for a daycare in my neighborhood.
Jeff?
I asked the same question. Have you been aware that she has had a daycare there with 4 kids?
No, not how many children she has.
Did you know she did have a
But I
daycare?
knew she had
Okay.
at least 1 or 2.
Have you had any issues with them?
No, because they're inside, they're babies.
Okay,
No.
All right.
But my neighbor does.
okay.
My neighbor lives directly behind her, and I have lived next to my neighbor now for going on 46 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
And if the applicant would, is that the last opposition?
Yes, that is.
If you'd be kind enough to come up, and if you have any words of rebuttal, take this time to do that, and then we may have some more questions for you.
I don't really know what to address, really. The kids aren't that noisy, and they don't throw toys all the time. And like I said, I raised my 3 kids there, so I'm sure they probably threw toys over in her yard as well. I've lived there since 1986. So, and yes, it is a quiet neighborhood for the most part. But there are kids in the neighborhood. It's not an over 55 community. There's tons of kids, maybe not right there, but I know there are other kids in the neighborhood because I've seen them, and I'm sure they play in their backyards as well. But I try to be very considerate. I've taken away some of the toys that can fly, like a Frisbee, so they don't play with Frisbees. For the most part, I now have toys that they can ride or they can push, because I do want to be considerate, and I can't get the toys back when they go in our yard. I can to my right or my left, but I can't get the toys back. So I think it's probably been 4 weeks since the little boy threw a hat in her yard. But the toys that were causing the problems, they're no longer allowed to play with those. As far as Edwin Drive goes, it is busy, but I think the biggest problem is they speed. But I do have 4 spots in my, that they can park. And I probably will have a talk with the current parents to say, please don't park on the street, because you never know. I mean, we have bus stops, so the buses park as well. But I mean, people are going to speed, so there's really nothing I can do except for make sure that my parents do try to park in my parking lot, in my driveway. That's what I'll try to do. And again, I don't plan on having 10 to 12 kids. I really just want to add some part-times, because my daughter has a lot of friends that work for the city, and since they know her, they come to me. And some of the daycare places are just out of reach. They're just too expensive, especially for part-time. So I'm trying, to help out the parents that really need part-time.
Karen?
So you'd be willing for a cap on, say, can we do that? Can we provide, say, no more than 8?
I'm fine.
4 full-time, 4 part-time, or something like that? Mhm.
Yeah.
You'd be amenable to that?
Oh, sure. I don't want 12 kids.
Okay.
Or 10.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Thank you, ma'am. We'll take this, close the public hearing, and we'll discuss this. And if we don't need any more discussion, maybe someone would make a motion.
Bob,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to approve item 14.
Okay.
Do you
Any-
want to change?
With the 4
with,
full-time and 4 part-time on the condition.
okay.
Can we do that? Or can we just do 8? Just do 8.
Do eight.
Do 8.
Just do 8, okay, with a cap of 8 children.
Yeah, staff would prefer just 8. Part-time versus full-time is hard to enforce.
Hey, do I have a second?
Well, hold on, before we second, can I say,
Sure.
okay, before we make the motion? And I think that Ms. Moore and Mrs. Efimel, I thought they brought up great points, and I think, they have valid, valid points. But, throughout, just about every month, we're approving, home daycares. So it's, without, much, not necessarily opposition, because, every now and then there is opposition, but without much complaints, afterwards. So I think that they did bring up some, very valid and very good points, but I'm in favor of the 8, the cap of
Okay.
8, yeah.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Did somebody second?
Second.
Jack seconds. So we'll call for the question.
By recorded vote of 10-0, item number 14, Donna C. Denham, has been approved with conditions as amended.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today.
All right.
And
The next item we will hear is item number 16, 27th and a half Street Garage LLC, an application for alternative compliance on property located at 2613 Atlantic Avenue in the Beach District. If there's an applicant here, could you please come to the podium and state your name for the record?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I'm going to abstain on this application. I have a business relationship with one of the partners in the development, so I'll keep quiet over here. Thank you.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Chris Harvey is my name.
Thank you.
That's the last name.
Glad you're with us.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me here. Our request is to have a special exemption for the alternative compliance to take the second phase of our development, the 27th Street project, from to all apartments on the south parcel. And that's what we're here to discuss today. Based on the conversations that I was listening to earlier, I understand there's some clarification questions from this body that I'm here to answer for anybody.
Okay, well, if someone took really good notes today, we'll start, who has, Ron can start it off, and that'll prompt some thinking.
Sure.
Yeah, my original concern is there is no elevation for us to look at. And have you all developed any elevations?
We have not done that just yet. What we have done is we considered this step number 1 in determining if we can get this, the alternative compliance approved so that we can have it as an all apartment deal itself. And so the way the ownership group has looked at it is we wanted to go take it in very small steps, and that was step 1. We have not done that. We have done some previous work on other types of developments on that site, and I believe that's what you looked at earlier, but we have not done elevations to the degree that we need to right now.
That would have been very helpful. I know without a doubt you'll do a good job. I mean, the work that you've done around the city is second to none. So I'm not concerned about that, but I would like to, typically when you're asking for alternative compliance, you show, well, this is why you need to do this. One thing is the mix, the either hotel or residential, but still, can you tell us what the exterior material is going to be constructed of? Will you talk about the surface of the structure, the outside of the structure,
Sure.
the railings, the glass, the glazing, those type of things? So
Sure.
that sustainability is real important.
Absolutely. If you're familiar with the project, the phase 1 of the project, which is the Hyatt House Hotel.
I'm not all that familiar with it.
Okay, it's an IFAS building with glass, and it's got railings, aluminum railings on the outside. What we're trying to do is create a destination point in the city. And we're going to tie the second phase of the building into the first phase. And so what we want to do is make one harmonious development that looks exactly the same. We work with the city on the, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but talking about the Stub Street there to try to tie both pieces together. It's all one project, but we're trying to tie both pieces together. So it's going to be an upper scale apartment complex, very similar to what we've done around, as you said, around the Virginia Beach and Town Center, and very similar to what's been done out there at the Hyatt House.
So the material is IFAS, you said? It's not a stone of some sort or any kind of rigid material?
It's not. It's IFAS, and and I know sometimes I can get a little bit, I know people have had problems in the past, but I think they have addressed a lot of those issues. And as you know, we're long-term holders of properties, and we'll have a professional management there that will be able to upkeep the building the entire time, similar to what we have right now at the Hyatt House.
You don't think having to paint it or things like that in the future is an issue if it's IFAS?
I don't, but we would agree to make sure that it's kept within some kind of reason to satisfy this body. I mean,
okay, well,
I don't think that would benefit anybody to have it looking bad on the outside.
Well, I just, because people can build really good-looking material
Sure.
projects and then sell them, and the next guy maybe doesn't think that way.
Sure.
I understand. And anyway, the other real question I had was about your parking plan.
Sure.
And, the fact that we have so many parking spaces, 1.3 per dwelling unit.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be, are you going to dedicate space, parking just for that, like you've done in the Westin, for example, so that the residents have parking and they're not fighting for parking from tourism and people using restaurants and things like that?
Absolutely. Our plan is, and I don't know if you can, I don't know if there's this is where the location of the parking deck. Obviously, you're right across the street from the proposed south parcel, and then this is the hotel. What we're planning to do is just exactly what you're saying, is to have, we're going to bifurcate the parking so that the apartments have their share of parking up to what code requires. The hotel will have parking in there as well, and we're going to size it accordingly. And what we've talked about doing, and it's not finalized yet, but what we've talked about doing is have also up to 100 to 150, depending on how big we want to make the garage itself. Private, but public spaces that are available for people to go out to the beach and that type of thing. So we will do that as well. We want to size it so that it benefits the community as well.
So you would accommodate the 1.3 bifurcated from the other, which is sort of a general parking that you're renting out to the public?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it would be public, apartments, and hotel would have their own as well. So it's similar to what you're talking about in the Westin, where the Westin has.
So it'll just be a color-coded, you just go up and they say this is red and you can't park here like you do in the Westin, for example?
We haven't gotten that far, but yes, it's going to be like that. I'm not sure if we're going to do it by color code or if we're going to do it by floor or how we're going to do it, but it's going to be so that it's very clear as to where the apartments park, where the public can park, and where the hotel can park as well.
Okay, good, thank you.
Jeff?
While we're on parking, so you don't envision the residents or your employees participating in the residential parking program that's down in the oceanfront? You'll house all of them in this parking garage?
If we have the ability to do that, we will try to do that, yes.
Okay. And are these apartments going to be we love short-term rentals right now. Are they going to be more long-term rentals or short-term rentals, or do you know?
Right now, it's contemplated to be long-term rentals, 12-month rentals is what we're planning on.
Okay.
Can you talk about any amenities that you're going to have relative to the apartments?
Alex, can you talk about the amenities?
Yeah, amenities will have.
I'm sorry, this is
Alex Olson. I'm a representative of the applicant. Our on-site amenities will have on-site, property management will have on-site, leasing obviously will have your top-notch fitness areas with all the newest and greatest stuff. We'll have club room, we'll have swimming pool, we'll have outdoor seating area on the second floor, I think, if you looked at the Masson area. So this will be very highly amenitized.
Is this going to be a market rate deal?
Yes, sir. This is
not a tax credit
No, sir.
deal? My part of what my question is going to work around is the access point that you planned for the hotel and you probably heard us talk today, it seems to me like that needs to be minimized because that street, that passageway there is for the public, and a lot of people go to the beach down there. And with your people not needing to come and go out of that, have you given any thought to moving that partially on Atlantic, or maybe a piece of it on Atlantic and a piece of it on that sidewalk area, like we've seen some of the other hotels? Or have you given any thought to anything but what's on this drawing that was part of the hotel plan?
We have not thought about that. That doesn't mean we can't go back and look at that again, but we have not thought about that. Again, as I stated earlier, this was step one to see if we can make this all apartments. And then once we do that, we can go back and work with the city staff in order to get those details done. We spent an inordinate amount of time developing this area here with the city staff. I think that went back and forth probably 5 or 6 times with Barry's staff to get the least amount of vehicular traffic and make it as small as possible so that you do have the ability to have a very large sidewalk so that people feel safe walking through there. So we went through a lot of kind of different venues and trying to figure out how we get that there. So again, we certainly would want to, we can go back and look at that again, but we certainly do want to get through this step as step one first.
Well, we understand because that was based on a hotel.
Absolutely.
With the hotel not there, based on an apartment building, we even question the need to have it there. I mean, you've got to have a way to get in and get out, but my thought would be I'd love to see half of it on Atlantic and then going out that way like one of the hotels down the street, just to minimize as much as possible the encroachment on that public right-of-way to the beach.
Sure. I understand, and what I would like to do is go back and at least study it so that I can say that from a building perspective, I can do that. And I don't want to give you an answer that says, yes, I can do it right now, and I turn around and say I can.
Because your plan, now you have a floor plan for the apartment building, but you don't have a elevation, and the floor plan shows a driveway or an entrance or something on Atlantic. Is that intended to be a roll-up door that a tractor-trailer can back in, or how, if I wanted to move in there and bring a moving van in, am I going to have to come and go out of the drop-off? Have you given any thought to that?
Absolutely. That's why we do have this. I haven't decided if it's going to be a roll-up door or what it's going to be. Obviously, we would follow code to make sure that it met code. But this is, as you said, so a truck, and it won't be a large truck because I'm not sure how an apartment, if they need the large trucks back in there. But this would be for the restaurant deliveries and also for your apartment move-in as well. We're considering this to be a restaurant. This is on the ocean side. But yes, we would have them, if this plan goes through, to back up there so that we would get them off Atlantic and be able to move in and move out as they see fit.
And there somewhere will be a freight elevator.
Correct.
David.
I just because that's something that the planning director said this morning. You have site plan approval already.
Correct.
For this scheme already, where you're
For the
loading on the side and just exactly what you're looking at right here.
Correct.
You can't lose sight of that. You know, and as much as you might like it differently, but I mean, you do have a site plan approval.
That's right.
Right.
But they're asking for a major change in the use.
I hear you.
And so it's like, quid pro quo.
I know, I just want to point it out.
I follow your thinking.
But I mean,
I do
we
too.
all are 100%, well, I won't say 100, but we all think, I heard it, that the residents down there would be good. That part of the beach needs 230 people living there full-time. That would be a great economic boost to that corridor. We just, you only get to do this once.
Sure.
We just want to make sure it's right. David?
I like the idea. I think it's a great idea. I'm very familiar with the work that y'all do. Y'all do great work. But to be consistent with what we do, we really don't go forward without looking at what's going to actually be there. I know you keep saying this is step one. Well, after this is done, do you plan on getting elevations and everything together before you go to council?
If that's a requirement, we would have to do that, obviously.
Okay, because we'd like to see things like that, because if we approve it and it goes to council and they say, well, what are these elevations, that went through us and we never got a chance to see them.
Sure.
So that's where I stand on that. But I like it, and I understand you have a site plan, approved site plan, but I would really love to see something you know.
And I feel exactly the same way, and I think there was a lot of conversation this morning. What I would like to present or see if maybe we could defer this item and have you guys bring us back, you know, not necessarily the final project, but close to what it is you're looking for, so that when we look at it and we can take pride in saying, yes, that's the kind of apartment complex or, you know, that we want down there. Because I think everybody's in agreement that we like the housing aspect of it, but I think there's just so many things that we're not sure about. And I think a lot of us are not pleased with how that drop-off is going to be with so much vehicular traffic where people think they're going to be walking and the potential of accident. And so I think we just have some concerns. Would you be opposed to that?
Well, what I would like to do, and again, it's just my wish list, is to, you know, what the application is for us to say, is to approve or not approve going to 100%. And I'm happy to come back to you at the appropriate time to say, this is what it's going to look like. But I'm not sure that, and I want to say this correctly, I don't want you to take any disrespect to this, but I'm not sure that what it looks like has any bearing on whether or not it's going to be, it can be 100% apartments versus not 100%. But I understand what you're saying in terms of wanting to know exactly what it looks like, and I'm happy to provide those renderings if that will suffice to you.
Is that appropriate, Barry, to like give approval for that one component and then have the project come back when they're?
I think it's been your policy. I'll be honest with you, I don't know that was always the policy with the level of elevation and detail, but from a policy standpoint or an experience standpoint, you have typically seen an elevation.
Mm-hmm. So if we were to, let's say, take a vote and approve the 100% as opposed to the 15, would there then need to be a condition put on that then it would come back to Planning Commission for?
Our attorney's shaking her head.
No.
You're done.
Right. We're done.
You're done.
You're done.
So I don't like that answer.
Right.
I like
sorry.
the potty break, but I don't like that
I
one.
hear that a lot.
All right, let's go Karen first and then Dave second.
Yeah, I had the same question Jan does, because I'd like you to consider that, because while I see that you have one request, I do think that request is a sizable enough shift to change the dynamic and the character. And I think that, as Bob has said, you know, there's kind of a careful balance we're trying to craft between this change you want, which is significant, and this alteration we want, which will also be significant. And when you said something earlier that kind of piqued my interest, which was you want these two properties to kind of speak to each other and work in tandem, and that simply feeds into my discontent with that use of the pedestrian walkway as an ingress-egress, because I don't find that to be a very, you know, linear, cohesive use of that property, especially when there's like seating area and restaurant area out there. Now we're going to have traffic going in and out. So I would prefer that it would be minimized, and I do think that's a reasonable trade-off to ask that we see what you're going to do with this sizable change, and in you presenting that, you consider a shift to the ingress-egress on that pedestrian walkway.
I guess.
Jeff?
Since your concern is to know whether this group would approve that, can we do an informal thumbs up to him without a vote saying, hey, we like your idea of apartment
No,
building?
I don't like thumbs up, a little head nodding.
A little head nodding? I mean, I think what you're hearing, I think everybody here is pretty happy with what you're looking to do. And like Ron said, we know you're going to build a good product. But then, like you're hearing, it just kind of makes us feel like we're not fully doing our job if we don't see what you're trying to build.
We just want more.
I'm completely understand that. Again, my goal is to say that we get the, as you say, the thumbs up, to say we're good to go for the 100%, because it is a financial consideration to going forward there. And so that's my issue there, to say, if I come back to you and then I get the thumbs down, then what do? I've spent a lot of money to, and that's why I'm here today, saying I think they're two separate and distinct, but I understand I understand what your thought process is.
They're telling us we can't separate them.
Absolutely, absolutely.
What is the value of this apartment project, just roughly?
If I had to put a number on it based on the preliminary, you're looking at between apartment complex is somewhere around 50 million, a little bit more, probably 55, 60 million. Plus, we've got to build a parking garage as well, with that as well, so that we can, get there to park the hotel, the apartments, and also the retail that's going to be out there. They're talking upwards of, between 75 and 80 million dollars.
Where are you parking the hotel people now?
They're on the
Surface?
They're on the surface here. They're on the surface here, and also they're right here as well.
Do you have a timeline that you've got to get that garage built for that hotel?
I do, and so that's why I wanted to come here to say.
And is that a city requirement or an internal requirement?
That is it's a city requirement that I need to be able to start the process of what I don't want to do is throw good money after bad. I want to be able to go and build this for the benefit of the city and my development as well, in a timely manner, so that we can move forward on this large project. I mean, it's a fair amount of investment that we've got to do, and just, again, here to say, want to get the thumbs up so that we can move forward.
Well, I will say this, if you are a reasonably intuitive person, I think you probably have figured out that, for the most part, we don't disagree with your concept, but you haven't told us enough. We need, in my way of thinking, we need a site plan. We need to know how are you going to build a extra 200 parking space garage? What are you going to do with that public right of way? So I would like somebody to make a motion that we defer this, and you guys get your act together and come back to us. And speaking for myself, not my other 9 friends, I don't think you'll waste your money. I think, we can't give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but if you're a reasonably intuitive person, if we didn't like this, it'd be very easy to turn it down. We'd have a motion to deny, and you could go away and build your hotel there with 15% apartments.
Sure.
But we do need more information. So,
That said, I'll make a motion to defer.
And before you vote, we're talking about schematics, obviously, and characterizations perhaps, too. Not full-blown drawings.
Sure.
Okay, that's all.
Right, and one thing is, we've had people come in here for just, single-family homes, and you turn them, they...
with full-blown elevations.
Right, well, without those, and,
we turn them down.
we deferred.
That's right.
We didn't turn, but we deferred them to come back.
Do we have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
One
Mike?
more thing I'd like to say that before we vote, please understand that, this is a major project in the city. I mean, and you want it to be, and you want it to be a focal point, and it will be, I'm sure. And if anything's not done quite, if there's something harebrained about the parking and whatever, people are going to come back to us and say, what were you all thinking, approving something like that without seeing anything? What'd you have? We didn't have any plans, we don't know anything about parking, and then it doesn't work out too well for us.
Sure.
So we have a motion and we have a second by Mr. Hodson, is that right? So we are, am I putting words in your
No,
mouth?
that was my second.
Okay.
You need to turn the other way, right?
Ready for the vote? Is this, we didn't put a timeline on the,
We don't usually.
we don't put a timeline on the deferral?
You can defer it indefinitely, or you can defer it to September, but it's up to you.
Can you be back in September?
If
You have to talk
if you're
about
not ready
schedule.
then, we'll let you know in
Talk-
September.
Staff about schedule.
Could we back that up just a minute and see where that gets us as far as staff? So we need it about a month ahead of time, right?
What is she doing? Oh, thank you.
We would always prefer an indefinite term, so it doesn't cause problems. If for whatever reason they can get their plans to us in a certain amount of time. But in September,
Killing it, it's not working.
just the date, we'd be happy, and we'll do everything to get them.
Well, you made the motion.
Just at his earliest, we're not here in August, so we can't do it in August, so just as soon as he can get it.
I'm not here in January, February, or March, or ever again.
Me either.
So are we ready to vote?
We've
We already voted.
Oh,
So indefinitely is...
Yeah.
A recorded vote of 9-0 with Commissioner
Just
Redmond
clear the screen.
abstaining from item number 16. 27th Street and a half, 27th and a half Street Garage LLC has been deferred.
Thank you. Thank you for your project, and we look forward to seeing you back here with a little more detail. Thank you.
We'll be here.
Okay, is there any more business for the Planning Commission today? If there is none, meeting adjourned.